Prince collapsed unconscious with a fever in an alley. What the nurse saw on his body shocked her. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Eleanor Whitmore kept her eyes forward as she stepped out into the night. London did not ask permission to be cold. It pressed itself into her cuffs and under her bonnet ribbon as if it meant to follow her home. She had been on her feet since dawn. Her hands smelled faintly of soap no matter how hard she scrubbed. The poorhouse infirmary had been loud all day, even when the patients were too weary to speak. Now, at last, the streets were quieter. Quieter did not mean kinder. Miss Whitmore. She paused only because the voice belonged to Mr. Hale, the clerk who locked the infirmary doors at night. He stood half inside the entry, lantern in hand, his collar turned up. "You should have someone see you home," he said. "I should have a carriage and a cook," Eleanor replied, keeping her tone light, "but I have neither." He looked as if he wanted to argue. He never did. He had daughters. He knew what the world did to women who accepted favors. "At least take the main road." "The main road has more men," Eleanor said. "I prefer fewer." He frowned. Fewer men and fewer witnesses are not always the same blessing. "I'll be quick," she promised. "Be safe," he said, and went back inside. Eleanor walked on, boots steady on the damp stones. She did not hurry. Hurrying drew attention. She had learned that years ago when she had still believed good intentions could shield her. A shop bell rang somewhere in the distance. A carriage rolled past on a larger street, wheels hissing over wet. The air tasted like coal smoke and winter. She turned down a narrower way, cutting behind a row of buildings that leaned toward one another like gossips. She told herself, as she always did, that she had walked this route before. She knew where the puddles were. She knew which doorways belonged to decent tradesmen and which belonged to men who asked questions with their eyes. Halfway through, she heard it. Not a shout, not laughter, not footsteps, a sound like someone trying to swallow and failing. Eleanor stopped so sharply her breath caught. Silence again. Then, softer, a thin rasp of air, as if lungs were working against a weight. She turned her head toward the deeper shadow at the bend of the alley. She could have kept walking. Many would have. The city trained people to mind their own business until someone else made the trouble worth noticing. But she was not built that way, no matter how she tried. "Hello," she called, keeping her voice calm. "Are you hurt?" No answer. She moved forward, one hand tightening around the strap of her satchel. It was mostly empty now. Only a few cloths, a small tin of salve, and a little bottle she used for disinfecting. Nothing that would impress anyone. Still, she held it like it mattered. "Sir," she said again, quieter. A shape shifted against the wall. For a moment she thought it was a drunk man slumped in a doorway. Then the lamplight caught the edge of a coat sleeve. Fine wool. Too fine for this place. She stepped closer until she could see him. He was young, not a boy, not yet worn into middle age. His hair, darker than the night, lay damp against his forehead. His face was pale in a way that had nothing to do with fear. His eyes were closed, his mouth parted slightly, and every breath sounded like it had to be earned. "Sir," Eleanor said more firmly now, "can you hear me?" His lips moved. Nothing came out. She crouched, careful not to touch him at first. She checked his face for signs she recognized from her work. He was not in a drunken stupor. His skin was too hot for that. Even through the thin air, she put the back of her fingers near his cheek. Heat. Too much. "Oh," she murmured, and felt her stomach sink with the familiar dread of fever. Fever could be fought. Fever could also kill while everyone argued over what should be done. She looked him over quickly, as she had learned to do in wards where there was never enough time. His coat was expensive. His shoes were polished, though now dulled by wet. His hands were not soft. That struck her at once. He should not have been there. He blinked, slow and unfocused. His gaze slid past her face, as if he could not decide whether she was real. "Water," he whispered. The word was scraped raw. Eleanor swallowed. "I don't have water with me. I can get you some. Where do you live?" His eyelids fluttered. His head tipped back against the brick as if the wall was the only thing holding him upright. "Home," he said, and then, as if offended by his own answer, tried again. "Not there." "Not where?" Eleanor asked. He didn't answer. His chin dropped toward his chest. For a terrible second she thought he had stopped breathing. Then his shoulders lifted, with another strained inhale. Eleanor stood and looked toward the mouth of the alley. No one in sight. Not a constable, not a passerby. Of course not. She looked back down at him. If she left him, he might be found by someone worse than the cold. If she stayed, she might be mistaken for the cause of his trouble. A woman alone with a man in a dark alley did not get the benefit of other people's imagination. Eleanor's pulse beat hard in her throat. She could call for help, but who would answer? And if they did, what would they assume? She crouched again and spoke closer to his ear, firm and clear, the way she spoke to patients who wanted to argue with death. Listen to me. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I'm a nurse. I can help you, but you must help me. Can you stand? His brows drew together, as if the question was an insult. He tried to push himself up. His arm trembled, his shoulder slipped. He sagged back with a quiet sound that made Eleanor's chest tighten. No, she said. All right, then I will do it. But you must try to stay awake. His lips moved again. This time he managed. Don't touch. She paused. The words were not proud. They were frightened. I have to, she said softly. If you don't want to die here, you must let someone touch you. His throat worked. He swallowed. A sheen of sweat clung to his skin. Eleanor slid her arm under his, careful, and braced her feet. On 3, she said. 1, 2, 3. He was heavier than he looked. Not fat, not slack, solid. That too made no sense with the helplessness of his fever. He tried to take a step. His boot dragged. Eleanor gritted her teeth. Good. Again. They moved an inch at a time, his weight leaning into her. He made a sound between breaths as if each one hurt. Almost, she lied. He gave a weak, humorless exhale. Liar. It startled her enough to nearly laugh. You can still judge my character, she said. That's a fine sign. They reached the end of the alley. The lamplight showed his face more clearly. His lashes were dark, his jaw was clean-shaven, his lips were dry. Someone had dressed him with care. Someone had also let him end up here. Eleanor looked both directions. A man and a woman moving together at night. It would still attract looks, but less than a woman alone dragging a stranger. She adjusted her grip, lifting his arm across her shoulders the way she had lifted men twice her size in wards. Where is your family? She asked. He didn't answer. Your friends? A faint shake of his head. Then you're coming with me, she said. He tried to protest, but his knees buckled. Eleanor tightened her hold and forced him forward. Her lodging was not far. She kept to the side streets, avoiding the brighter roads where respectable people might stare longer. Twice she felt eyes on them from windows. She lowered her chin and walked as if she had every right. At the building entrance, Mrs. Pruitt's curtains twitched. Of course, the landlady opened the door before Eleanor could fumble for her key. She was a broad woman with sharp eyes and an apron that suggested she had been waiting. Miss Whitmore, Mrs. Pruitt said, her voice low and thrilled in the way of scandal. What is this? A patient, Eleanor answered, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Mrs. Pruitt leaned forward, sniffed the air, then frowned. He doesn't smell like gin. Because he's ill. Men are always ill when they want to be carried, Mrs. Pruitt muttered, then peered at the young man's face. Her mouth tightened. He looks like money. Eleanor felt her cheeks heat, not from shame but from anger. He looks like fever. Mrs. Pruitt's gaze flicked to Eleanor's. If he dies in my house, it will cause trouble. If he dies in the street, it will be worse, Eleanor said. Mrs. Pruitt hesitated. There was something in her expression that suggested she had once been young too, and had once needed someone to look away from a rule. Finally, she stood aside. Up the stairs, then. Quickly. Eleanor did not thank her. Gratitude could sound like admission. They climbed. The young man stumbled twice. Eleanor's shoulder ached. She kept her grip firm. At her door, she fumbled with the key. The man's breath was hot against her neck. Almost, she murmured, more to herself than to him. His head turned, as if he heard the familiar comfort of the lie again. Don't tell them, he whispered. Tell who? His hand moved weakly, searching for something. When his fingers found the inside pocket of his coat, he clutched it with sudden force, as if even fever could not loosen that instinct. Eleanor managed to open the door with her free hand and guide him inside. Her room was small, neat and plain. A narrow bed, a washstand, a chair, a tiny grate for coal, currently cold because coal was precious, a kettle, a folded blanket. It was not a place for a gentleman with fine wool. It was a place for survival. She guided him to the bed and eased him down. He tried to keep his boots off the coverlet even now. "Lie back," she ordered. He obeyed for half a second, then tensed. "Nurse," he said, and the word came out sharp with panic. His eyes opened wider. He looked around as if he expected the walls to move. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, keeping her body between him and the door, letting him see her hands. "Look at me," she said. "You're safe. You're in my room. I brought you here because you were burning up in the street. No one is here but me." He stared at her face. His gaze flickered, trying to catch hold of her. "Your name?" he asked. He sounded offended by his own weakness. "I told you, Eleanor." "No," he said. "Your family name." She stiffened. "Whitmore." He seemed to absorb it like a man memorizing a name for later. "And yours?" she asked. His lips parted, then closed. He looked away as if the answer was dangerous. Eleanor did not press. She stood. "I'm going to make heat, then water. Then I'll bring your fever down. You can argue when you can stand without swaying." He made a sound that might have been a laugh, but it turned into a cough. His hand went to his chest, as if even that small movement hurt. Eleanor crossed to the washstand and poured a little water into the basin. She added a few drops from her bottle. The smell was sharp. She soaked a cloth and wrung it out. Then she went to the grate, knelt, and coaxed a flame with what little coal she had left. It caught slowly, grudgingly, like everything in winter. While it warmed, she returned to the bed. "May I?" she asked, nodding toward his coat. His eyes narrowed. "No." "You're shaking," she said, "and you're sweating. Your body can't decide whether it's freezing or burning. If you keep that coat on, it will trap the heat." I said no. Eleanor lifted her chin. "Then you may die in it. But you will not die in my room if I can prevent it. And I cannot prevent it while you insist on dignity over breath." He stared at her, as if he had never heard a woman speak to him that way. "Who are you?" he rasped. "To order me." Eleanor met his gaze without softness. "A nurse." His eyelids fluttered, and his focus slipped. "Nurse," he repeated, as if it was both an insult and a lifeline. "Exactly," she said. "Now, either you help me or you don't." His jaw worked. He looked as if he wanted to refuse simply to prove he could, but fever made honesty unavoidable. His fingers loosened slightly from the inner pocket of his coat. "Fine," he said, like a man granting permission to the world. "Quickly, quickly," Eleanor agreed. She unfastened the buttons with careful hands. The coat was heavy and damp. She drew it off his shoulders and hung it on the chair. His waistcoat came next. He flinched when she touched him near the ribs. "You have pain there," she said. "Don't," he whispered. "Don't what?" "Ask," he said. "Just do." Eleanor paused. The words were strange. Most men demanded reassurance or control. This man demanded silence. She softened her voice. "All right, I won't pry, but I'll speak if I must. You're not in charge tonight." He exhaled, small and rough, and let his head fall back against the pillow. Eleanor loosened his collar and pulled the neckcloth free enough for him to breathe. Then she saw his hand again, the one that had been clutching his coat pocket. There was a ring, not a plain band. Something heavier. It looked older than fashion, as if it belonged to a line of men rather than to a single one. His fingers curled around it as soon as he noticed her eyes. "You won't take it," he said, voice thin with sudden urgency. Eleanor raised her brows. "I don't steal from my patients." His gaze held hers, sharp even through fever. "Promise." Eleanor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter. "I promise." Only then did his grip ease, just a fraction. She brought the cool cloth to his forehead. His skin was hot enough to make the cloth feel warm almost immediately. "Drink," she said, lifting a cup toward him. He turned his face away. "You asked for water in the alley," she reminded him. "That was before," he murmured. "Before you realized you had to rely on someone?" Eleanor kept her tone firm, but her heart tightened. "Open your mouth." His eyes opened a sliver. He looked at her, then at the cup, as if it were a bargain he despised. Slowly, he complied. Eleanor steadied his head with one hand and tipped the cup carefully. He swallowed once, then coughed. Water spilled onto his chin. "Easy," she said, wiping his mouth with the cloth. "Slow." He tried again. This time he managed a few sips. "Good," she said. His eyelids fluttered. "Don't say good." Eleanor almost smiled. "Why not?" "Because," he whispered, and then his voice vanished. She watched him for a beat. The fever had him drifting already, pulled under by exhaustion. Eleanor kept the cloth on his forehead and thought rapidly through her options. She could fetch Dr. Pembroke, but the doctor would ask questions. He would see the expensive clothes and begin to imagine a story that would not favor her. She could send for a constable, but then the man would be taken somewhere harsh and public, and she doubted he would survive a night in a station cell. She could do nothing and hope his fever broke. Hope was not a plan. Eleanor stood and went to the chair where the coat hung. She did not touch the ring. She did not touch the inner pocket, but she checked the outside pockets for anything that might tell her whom to send word to. Her fingers brushed a folded paper. She hesitated, then drew it out. It was blank. Not empty. Blank. As if someone had carried paper for a message and then never dared to write it. Eleanor frowned. That too felt like a message. She returned to the bed and checked his pulse the way she had been taught. It was fast, too fast. "You need warmth," she murmured, mostly to herself. "And rest, and luck." He stirred, catching the last word. "Luck," he repeated, voice rough. "No, no luck. No, luck," he insisted, and a faint bitterness edged the words. "Only arrangements." "Arrangements made by whom?" Eleanor asked before she could stop herself. His face tightened. For an instant, his eyes opened, clearer than before. He looked at her not like a patient, but like a man remembering a room full of people he could not trust. Then he whispered, "Crane." The name dropped into Eleanor's mind like a stone into water. "Crane," she repeated softly. "Is that your family?" His lips moved. It might have been no, it might have been don't. Then his gaze rolled away again, and he fell into the strange, half-waking state fever brought. Eleanor sat back on her heels. She had heard countless fevered names. Some were nonsense. Some were prayers. Some were the names of people patients wished for. This had not sounded like wish. It had sounded like warning. She pressed the cool cloth to his forehead again and watched his breathing. It still rasped. Not as badly as in the alley, but enough to keep her alert. The grate began to warm the room modestly, as if embarrassed by its own weakness. Eleanor poured more water into the kettle and set it near the heat. The man shifted again, restless. His hand moved toward his coat pocket even in sleep, seeking the ring like a child seeking comfort. Eleanor caught his wrist gently. His skin was hot, but under the heat she felt something else. A faint, rough ridge around the wrist, like a mark left by repeated pressure. Not fresh, old. The skin there had a different texture, not a bruise, not damage that made her flinch. Something more puzzling, as if a tight strap or a firm band had been worn there often, long enough for the body to remember it. She looked closer. Under the lamplight she saw a faint stain on the inside of his wrist, a smudge of ink that would not quite wash away. Not a tattoo, not decoration. A practical mark, half faded. Like the kind she saw sometimes at charity wards when patients were recorded quickly, when paper was scarce, when bodies became ledgers. Eleanor's breath caught. No gentleman who lived behind polished doors should have a ward mark on his skin. She stared for a moment too long. The man stirred. His eyes opened, unfocused. He saw her expression. "What?" he whispered, and the word came out rough with suspicion. Eleanor let his wrist go as if it had burned her. "Nothing," she lied too quickly. His gaze drifted down to his own hand, then to his wrist. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. He tried to pull his sleeve down, but his fingers fumbled. "Don't look," he said, and the plea in it was quieter than pride. Eleanor's throat tightened. "I wasn't judging you. You don't know what you saw," he muttered. "I saw an ink mark," she said carefully. "And hands that have done work." His lips pressed together. A sheen of sweat rolled down his temple. "You shouldn't have," he said, voice thin. "You shouldn't have brought me." Eleanor leaned in. her voice low, controlled, the way she spoke to frightened patients. "I brought you because you were alone and you were burning with fever. Whatever your reasons for being in that alley, they are not my concern tonight. My concern is your breathing." He swallowed, eyes closing again. "Eleanor," he whispered, as if he had decided her name mattered. "Yes." "Don't," he began, then stopped as if the words were too heavy. "Don't what?" she insisted, gently but firmly. His lips moved again. "Don't let them." "Let who?" His hand clenched around the ring again. The metal caught the lamplight for an instant, showing a carved crest Eleanor could not place, and then his fingers hid it. "Them," he repeated, and the word was thick with exhaustion. Eleanor stood abruptly, as if movement could shake off the feeling that her room had changed. "All right," she said, more to herself than to him. "No them, just me." She fetched another cloth, dipped it in water warmed slightly by the grate, and returned to the bed. She worked steadily, cool cloth to forehead, a few sips of water when he could swallow. Gentle pressure to the chest to ease breathing. Not too much, not too fast, not enough to frighten him. At one point, he opened his eyes and stared at her with something like disbelief. "You're still here," he murmured. Eleanor's mouth tightened. "I don't abandon patients." He studied her face, as if trying to decide whether she was foolish or dangerous. "You'll regret it," he whispered. "Perhaps," she said. "But regret is easier to carry than a corpse." His gaze held hers for a moment longer. Then his eyes slid shut. Eleanor continued. The hours felt both slow and fast. Fever made time strange. She listened to his breathing like it was a clock she could not afford to lose. She kept her own thoughts locked away because thinking too far ahead would only produce fear. Still fear crept in. Who was he? Why had he been in that alley? Why did he speak like a man expecting pursuit? She glanced at the coat again, at the fine seams, at the careful tailoring. Then she glanced at the ink stain on his wrist, the roughened texture of the skin, the calluses on his fingertips. 2 stories, 1 body. The kettle began to hiss softly. Eleanor poured a little warm water into a cup and tried again. "Drink," she said. He turned his head away, stubborn, even half asleep. Eleanor exhaled through her nose. "If you refuse, I will pour it between your lips a drop at a time until you are too annoyed to faint." A faint sound left him, almost a laugh. He opened his mouth without looking at her. "There," she said, tipping the cup carefully. "That's good." He swallowed and whispered, "Stop saying that." Eleanor leaned closer, her voice softer now. "Then tell me what to say." He frowned, as if the question required more strength than he had. "Say," he murmured, "it will pass." Eleanor's heart tightened. Patients asked for that phrase often, as if words could become medicine. "It will pass," she said, and kept her voice steady. His eyelids fluttered. "Promise." Eleanor hesitated only a second. Then she said, "I promise I will do everything I can." He seemed to accept that. His hand loosened slightly. The room was very quiet. Only the faint crackle of coal, the soft hiss of the kettle cooling, the long rough breaths of the man she had dragged out of the night. Eleanor moved to the washstand and cleaned her hands again, scrubbing as if she could scrub away the unease. When she turned back, he was staring at the ceiling. "Do you see someone?" she asked. "Yes," he whispered. "Who?" His lips parted. For a moment, Eleanor expected a woman's name. Instead, he said, "My mother." Eleanor's throat tightened despite herself. "She isn't here." He did not look at her. She would not approve. Eleanor sat down again, careful not to let the bed creak too much. "Of what?" she asked. His eyes shifted toward her. They were clearer for a moment, and they held an emotion she did not want to name. "Of you," he said. Eleanor felt a strange sting behind her eyes. Not because she cared about a stranger's mother, because she recognized the tone, the assumption that approval was a gate, and women like Eleanor stood outside it no matter what good they did. She kept her voice even. "Then it is fortunate I am not seeking her approval." His lips twitched faintly, as if that pleased him against his will. "You speak," he murmured. "As if you have nothing to lose." Eleanor's fingers tightened around the cloth. "I have plenty to lose." He watched her. "Then why?" He didn't finish. A shiver ran through him. His teeth clicked once. His face tightened, and he squeezed his eyes shut as the fever surged again. Eleanor moved instantly, laying the cool cloth over his forehead, then another at his neck. "Hush," she said. "No questions. Breathe." His breath rasped. Eleanor's mind raced. She needed help. But help came with eyes and tongues. She reached for his hand again, not the one with the ring, the other. She held it firmly, anchoring him. "You're here," she said. "Stay here." His fingers squeezed hers weakly, then slipped. He murmured something. Not words, more like fragments torn loose. "Crane, no. Papers, burn." Eleanor froze. "Papers?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. His mouth moved again. "Eleanor," he whispered, and the sound of her name from his mouth felt too intimate, too strange in the plainness of her room. "Yes," she said, bending closer. "Door," he murmured. She looked toward it. At first she heard nothing. Then, faintly, the tread of steps on the stairs. Measured, not hurried, not the stumble of a drunk neighbor. Eleanor stood so fast her chair scraped. She went to the door and pressed her ear to it. Footsteps stopped outside. Her hand hovered near the latch, then pulled away. She did not open it. She did not speak. A pause. Then a knock, firm and polite, as if the person on the other side had all the time in the world. The knock came again, measured and patient. Eleanor kept her cheek close to the wood, listening. A man's voice followed, calm and well-bred. "Miss Whitmore, if you please." Her breath stalled. No one in this building used her name with that tone as if it belonged on a calling card. She did not move the latch. "Who is it?" "A friend," the voice said, as if the word solved everything. "We are looking for a gentleman who has lost his way." Eleanor's eyes flicked to the bed. The fevered man had turned his head toward the door. His eyes were half open now, glassy but aware enough to be afraid. Eleanor stepped away from the door and lowered her voice. "Stay quiet." His lips moved. Nothing came out. She returned to the door and spoke louder. "This is a lodging house. You have the wrong place." A second voice joined in, slightly older, still polite. "We do not. Our concern is urgent. If he is unwell, we can provide proper care." Eleanor held her chin high, though no one could see it. Proper care is not obtained by disturbing a woman alone at night. A pause, as if the men found that mildly amusing. The first voice softened. "No offense is intended. We are in a difficult position. We will be grateful for your discretion." "Discretion," Eleanor repeated, tasting the word. "And if I am not discreet?" Another pause. The second voice answered. "Then matters may become unpleasant for everyone." Eleanor's fingers tightened against the doorframe. She forced her voice to stay steady. "If you believe a gentleman is here, you may return in daylight with a constable." "We would prefer to avoid attention," the first man said. "May we come in and confirm he is not here?" "You may remain in the room. We will not cross the threshold." Eleanor's stomach tightened. They were skilled. Every sentence was designed to sound reasonable. She pictured herself opening the door a fraction, letting them peer in, letting their eyes land on the bed. Then what? A polite thanks and hands that would lift the man whether he could breathe or not. She could object, and in their story she would become the obstacle, not the nurse. Behind her, the man on the bed pushed himself up with a trembling arm. Eleanor spun. "No!" His eyes found hers. In that instant, his fever seemed to step back, as if something sharper had taken its place. His lips formed words without sound at first, then forced air through them. "Not," he rasped. "Them." Eleanor went still. He gripped her wrist. His hand was hot, but the grasp was strong. A warning, a plea, and something else too. Recognition. He knew the voices. Eleanor covered his hand with her own for a brief second, just enough to tell him she understood. Then she straightened, turned, and faced the door again. "You will not come in," she said. The first voice remained pleasant. "Miss Whitmore, I assure you we mean no harm." "Then you will leave," Eleanor replied. A quieter shift outside, like fabric brushing fabric. The second man spoke again, still courteous, now edged with faint impatience. "We have been instructed to retrieve him. It is our duty." Eleanor's heart hammered. "And it is my duty to protect a patient from being moved when he is dangerously ill." "A patient," the first man repeated, as if he liked the word. "Then you are a nurse?" "I am." "How fortunate," he said. Then you will understand that a gentleman of importance requires a physician of a higher caliber than the streets can offer. Eleanor kept her voice firm. Send your physician in the morning. Tonight he stays where he is. Another pause, longer this time. The first man sighed as if he were disappointed in her manners. Miss Whitmore, you are forcing us to be direct. If you are sheltering him, you are placing yourself in a compromised position. A compromised position, Eleanor echoed. A woman alone, the second man added gently, with a gentleman in her room. You must see how such a thing might be. Disgust. Eleanor's cheeks went cold. There it was. Not a threat of force, a threat of rumor. The oldest weapon in the world, sharp as any blade without needing to be held. She swallowed. If you wish to spread lies about me, you will do so whether I open this door or not. Lies, the first man said, sounding faintly wounded. We merely observe what society observes. Eleanor's hand hovered near the latch again. She could open it and plead, keep everything polite, ask them to wait, to bring a doctor first, but she could hear it already in their tone. They were not here to ask. The man on the bed made a small, strangled sound. Eleanor stepped back from the door, keeping her body between it and him. Then she raised her voice. You may tell society whatever pleases you, she said. But if you do not leave at once, I will call Mrs. Pruitt, and she will call the entire building, and you will have the attention you claim to dislike. Outside, a soft chuckle. Mrs. Pruitt, the first man repeated. The landlady. Yes, she will be very protective of her reputation. Eleanor did not answer. The second man spoke, still calm. We will return in the morning. I will be here, Eleanor said. See that you are, the first man replied. And, Miss Whitmore, do remember that helpfulness is a virtue, but misplaced helpfulness can destroy a life. Eleanor leaned close to the door again, voice low now, sharper. It can also save one. Silence. Then footsteps, measured again, withdrawing down the corridor and onto the stairs. Not hurried, not defeated. Simply postponing. Eleanor stayed frozen until she could no longer hear them. Only then did she turn back. The man had slumped against her pillow. His eyes were open, but unfocused. His breathing was still rough, still hot. Eleanor crossed quickly and knelt beside the bed. You know them, she said. His lips moved. A whisper came out like ash. They know me, he corrected. Eleanor kept her voice even. Who are they? His brows tightened. He shook his head once, small and stubborn, then winced as if the motion pained him. You can barely sit up, Eleanor said, yet you found strength to warn me. That tells me enough to keep the door closed. He stared at her a moment, as if assessing whether she would betray him out of fear or money. Then his gaze drifted to his own hand. The ring. He tried to hide it again, but the effort made him sway. Eleanor caught his shoulder to steady him. Lie down. He obeyed, but his eyes stayed on her. You promised, he rasped. I did, Eleanor said, and I have not touched it. His eyelids fluttered. Good, he murmured, then seemed to remember himself. Don't say that. Eleanor almost smiled despite the tension in her chest. Then stop doing things that deserve praise. His mouth twitched faintly, a shadow of amusement. It vanished as quickly as it came. Eleanor laid her palm against his forehead. The heat had not broken. If anything, it had grown more severe with the fright. All right, she said, brisk. We must keep you from burning yourself out. He let out a rough breath. They'll come back. Yes, and you'll open, he whispered, as if daring her. Eleanor met his gaze. Not tonight. His eyes narrowed, then softened, and the change was so quick she wondered if she imagined it. Why? It was not a question of gratitude. It was a question of logic, of cost. Eleanor's voice lowered. Because you asked me not to let them, and because you are ill, and because I do not like being ordered by strangers in corridors. His eyelids drifted shut. Stubborn, he murmured. Eleanor pressed a cool cloth to his neck. Call it what you like. Drink. He made a faint sound of protest, but he swallowed a few sips. When she set the cup down, she stood and went to the chair where his coat hung. She should not search him. She knew that. It was not proper, but proper did not keep men alive. She lifted the coat gently. Her eyes went to the inside pocket where his hand had clutched earlier. She hesitated, then slipped her fingers inside. She found another folded paper. Not blank this time. A card. Heavy. Expensive. The edges were crisp, as if it had never been handled by ordinary hands. Eleanor held it closer to the lamp. There was a name on it. She did not recognize it, but the letters were elegant, and the title beneath was worse than a name. Private Secretary. No further explanation. Eleanor's throat tightened. She looked back at the bed. The man was breathing with eyes closed now, his face strained even in sleep. She returned the card exactly where she found it. Then she sat again and forced herself to focus on her work. Minutes passed, then more. The building creaked the way old buildings did, settling into its own bones. Somewhere below, Mrs. Pruitt coughed, and Eleanor imagined her sitting in her little parlor, wide awake, turning the night into a story she could sell with her eyes by morning. Eleanor's jaw tightened. She checked the man's wrist again while he slept, careful. The faint ink stain remained. It was not a decorative mark. It was practical. The more she looked, the more it unsettled her. A gentleman with a ward mark, calloused hands, a private secretary's card, and men searching for him at midnight. The world did not produce such combinations by accident. The man stirred, face tightening as if he battled something in his mind. "No," he whispered, barely audible. Eleanor leaned closer. "What is it?" His mouth moved again. "Don't make me." "Make you what?" His eyes opened, unfocused. He seemed to look through her. "Smile," he murmured, and the word came out like a bruise. "Wave. Agree." Eleanor's breath caught. He blinked slowly. His gaze found her face at last, as if he realized he had spoken aloud. For a moment, something like embarrassment crossed his expression. Then he swallowed and turned his head away. Eleanor kept her voice gentle but steady. "You don't have to tell me anything you can't, but you do have to let me keep you alive." His lips pressed together. A slight nod. Eleanor reached for another cloth. At some point the night began to thin. The window, still dark, carried a paler shade behind it. Dawn was approaching. Eleanor had not slept. She did not allow herself to. She had dozed in chairs beside beds before, waking at the slightest change in breath. But tonight her mind would not loosen its grip. Too many questions hovered, too many consequences. When the man's breathing eased for a brief stretch, Eleanor rose and went to the washstand to rinse her hands again. A soft knock came from the wall, through the thin plaster. Mrs. Larkin, the neighbor in her own room, signaling as she often did when she wanted a bit of gossip disguised as concern. Eleanor ignored it. Another knock, more insistent. Eleanor exhaled and called softly through the wall. "I'm occupied." "Occupied?" Mrs. Larkin repeated, delighted by the word. "At this hour?" "Someone is ill," Eleanor replied. A pause. "A man?" Eleanor shut her eyes for a second. "Yes." A small, scandalized gasp, and then silence that felt less like politeness and more like a promise to spread the information. Eleanor returned to the bed, jaw tight. The man opened his eyes again. "Who?" he whispered. "Was that?" "A neighbor," Eleanor said. "She is curious." His mouth twitched, almost bitter. "Curiosity is a sport." Eleanor didn't answer. She checked his pulse again. Still fast, still too hot. "You need a doctor," she murmured, unable to avoid it anymore. His eyes sharpened slightly. "No, you can't refuse a physician while half delirious," Eleanor said. "I can refuse anything," he whispered. Eleanor leaned close, voice low. "And I can refuse to let you die out of stubborn pride." His gaze held hers. "You don't know what a doctor will do." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Then tell me." He swallowed. "They report." "To whom?" He did not answer. Eleanor sat back, trying to control the tremor in her own chest. "All right, if you don't want a doctor, we will proceed without one for now. But you must take water, you must rest, and you must stop trying to sit up whenever the world frightens you." A faint huff of air left him, almost a laugh. "As you command." Eleanor shot him a look. "Don't mock me." His eyelids drifted. "I'm not," he murmured. "I'm surprised." "By what?" He forced his eyes open again. They were clearer now, though still fever-bright. "That someone says no and means it." Eleanor felt a strange chill. She set another cool cloth on his forehead. "Sleep." His lips moved. He whispered, Eleanor. Yes? Lock it, he murmured. Eleanor's gaze flicked to the door. She had already slid the bolt, but she rose anyway, went to it, and checked. The latch was secure. When she returned, the man's eyes had closed again. The next hour passed in an uneasy rhythm. His breathing rose and fell. The coal in the grate burned down. Eleanor added only a little more, careful. She could not afford waste. Not with rent due soon, and her wages uncertain. She tried not to think about the men's threat. The word compromised. The way they had said society observes. Society always observed women like Eleanor. If she had been a man, she could have helped a stranger and been called brave. As a woman, she would be called something else. The sky outside brightened slowly, and then, just as Eleanor allowed herself to think perhaps the men had truly gone, there came another sound in the corridor. Not footsteps, a soft scrape, like paper sliding over wood. Eleanor's head snapped toward the door. She stood and moved quietly, careful not to make the floorboards complain. She opened the bolt a fraction, peering down at the gap beneath. A pale rectangle rested there. A note. Eleanor's stomach tightened. She opened the door just enough to snatch it, then closed it again and slid the bolt back into place with a decisive click. She held the paper in her hands. It was thick, expensive. A seal sat on the fold, pressed in dark wax. Not the sort of seal a clerk used. She turned it toward the lamp and her breath caught. A crest. It was not merely decorative. It carried authority the way a uniform carried authority. Quietly, unquestionably. Behind her, the man stirred. "Eleanor," he rasped as if he sensed danger. Eleanor did not answer. Her fingers were stiff as she broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet, folded precisely. The writing was short. The ink was dark and confident. It did not ask. It instructed. Eleanor read it once, then again, as if the words might change. Her mouth went dry. The man on the bed pushed himself up slightly, wincing, eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Eleanor looked at him, then at the crest again. Her voice came out low. "It's an order," she said. "From who?" Eleanor swallowed. She had no right to speak the words aloud. It felt like invoking a storm, but the seal had already invoked it. "It tells me to present myself at a specified address before noon," she said, and her hands tightened around the paper as the realization landed like a weight in her chest. The crest on the wax was royal, and the note bore the same crest. Eleanor kept the note in her hand as if it might bite. The man on her bed stared at it with a look that did not belong to fever. "Read it again," he said, voice rough. "I have," Eleanor replied. "It does not become kinder." He swallowed, his throat working painfully. "What address?" Eleanor read it aloud. The street was one she knew by reputation, not by experience. Quiet. Expensive. The kind of place where doors did not open unless someone had already decided you were allowed to enter. His eyes closed for a moment, and his jaw tightened. "You know it," Eleanor said. He opened his eyes again. "I know who lives near it." "That is not an answer." "It is," he muttered. "Just not one you'll like." Eleanor's fingers tightened around the paper. "If it bears a royal crest, then it is meant to frighten me into obedience." "Yes," he said too quickly. Eleanor studied his face. "And if I obey, I walk into a room where everyone speaks politely while deciding what to do with me." "Yes," he said again. Eleanor's chest tightened. "Then why would anyone send it?" His gaze flicked to the ring on his finger. He tried to cover it with his other hand as if ashamed of its weight. "Because," he whispered, "they can." Eleanor leaned closer, keeping her voice low. "Who are they?" he swallowed. "People who do not like surprises." "Am I a surprise?" Eleanor asked. His mouth twitched faintly. Then the expression vanished under strain. "You are an inconvenience." Eleanor let out a short breath, half humorless, half offended. How flattering. He tried to sit up straighter and failed, his shoulders trembling. Eleanor pushed him gently back. "Do not perform bravery for me. Save your strength." His eyes sharpened. "You should not go." "And if I do not?" He hesitated, and Eleanor heard the truth in the pause before he spoke. "Then they will come here again," he said. "And next time, they will not ask." Eleanor's stomach clenched. "They did not ask this time either. They suggested." He closed his eyes. "Eleanor." "Yes." His voice dropped. "If you go, you must speak carefully." "I always speak carefully," she said. He opened his eyes again, and there was something like urgency in them. "No, you must speak like someone whose life is being weighed by strangers who think you are less than a servant." Eleanor's throat tightened. She hated that he was right. She hated that he understood the rules better than she did. "Tell me your name," she said suddenly. "Your real name." His gaze snapped to hers. Eleanor held it steady. "If I am to be summoned by a crest, then I will not walk into that house as a fool who does not even know whom she saved." He stared at her for a long beat. Then his eyes drifted toward the window, pale daylight starting to press behind the glass. "I cannot," he said. "You cannot," Eleanor echoed, incredulous. "Or you will not." His jaw worked. "If I say it, it becomes real." "It is already real," Eleanor said. "Your fever is real. That ring is real. Those men are real. The crest is real. You cannot keep reality in your pocket and pretend it is only paper." His eyes narrowed as if he admired her stubbornness and hated it at the same time. He whispered, "Henry." Eleanor waited. He took a shallow breath. "Henry Ashford." Her fingers went cold around the note. She did not bow. She did not gasp. She did not perform any of the reactions the world expected from someone hearing a royal name in a modest room. She simply stared at him. "You're certain," she said. His lips tightened. "Yes." "And you were in that alley," Eleanor said, choosing each word, "alone, feverish, with men looking for you." "Yes." Eleanor's mind turned sharply, trying to catch a single explanation that made sense. "Why?" she demanded. He looked away. "Not now." "Not now," Eleanor repeated. "When, then? After you are dead? After I am ruined?" His gaze flicked back to her. "You are not ruined." Eleanor laughed once, short and bitter. "A prince says so and the world obeys." His expression tightened. "Do not use my name like a weapon." "I am not," Eleanor said, and softened her voice despite herself. "I am trying to understand the danger." Henry's eyes held hers. "The danger," he whispered, "is not only to you." Eleanor's heart beat hard. "To whom else?" He hesitated, then murmured, "To people who will suffer if the wrong person speaks first." "Then speak to me," Eleanor said. "Speak first." Henry's face tightened as if he were fighting sleep and memory together. "There are papers." "Papers," Eleanor repeated, hearing the word he had murmured in fever. He nodded faintly. "If they are found, they will turn it into something else." "What is it?" Eleanor demanded. Henry's gaze drifted and the fever took him again for a moment. When he came back, his voice was lower. "A truth," Eleanor exhaled, frustrated. "That is not helpful." He gave a faint, dry sound that might have been a laugh. "It never is." Eleanor stood and folded the note carefully, as if tidiness might impose order on her life. "I am going," she said. Henry's eyes widened slightly. "No, I do not mean," Eleanor said sharply, "that I am going to obey them like a frightened girl. I mean I am going to go because refusing will bring them here again, and I will not have them in my room with you too weak to stand." Henry's jaw tightened. "You should leave me." Eleanor stared at him. "Say that again," he swallowed. "You should leave me, go to your work, let them find me, let them take me." Eleanor's voice dropped, fierce. "You are not a parcel left on a step." Henry's gaze held hers. "You cannot protect me." "Perhaps not forever," she replied. "But I protected you last night. I will not stop now because your title frightens me." His eyes flicked away. "It should." Eleanor stepped closer, her face near his. "Then be frightened with me and tell me what to do." Henry stared at her as if no one had ever spoken to him like an ally. Then he whispered, "Do not say you know me." Eleanor blinked. "What?" He forced himself to sit up a little, wincing. "If they ask how you found me, you found a stranger. You did not recognize me. You did not know who I was. You did not see my ring." Eleanor's mouth tightened. "And what do I say when they demand it?" Henry's gaze sharpened. "You say you were doing your duty." Eleanor nodded slowly. "That part is true." Henry's breathing rasped again. He pressed his hand to his chest, a fleeting sign of pain. Eleanor moved, adjusting his pillow, calming him with the familiar motions. "Lie back," she ordered. Henry obeyed, eyes half closing. "You shouldn't go alone," he murmured. "I have no one," Eleanor said. His eyes opened again, and something passed over his face. "Yes," he whispered. "You do." Eleanor froze. "Who?" Henry's gaze drifted, unfocused, as if he had spoken too far ahead of himself. "No one you can trust," he corrected. Eleanor's hands stilled on the blanket. "That is not comforting." Henry's lips pressed together. "I did not say it to comfort you." Eleanor exhaled and forced her mind back to what she could control. She checked the bolt again. She checked the window latch. She rearranged the room to look less like a sick room and more like a woman's simple lodging. She hated herself for it, hated that appearances mattered more than breath, but she could not afford to pretend otherwise. Henry watched her with tired eyes. "You've done this before," he said quietly. Eleanor did not turn. "Done what?" "Prepared for judgment," he replied. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the chair. "I live in a world where judgment is delivered like milk, daily. Whether ordered or not." Henry's expression tightened. "I am sorry." Eleanor turned then, startled by the sincerity in his voice. "You are a stranger," she said. "Do not apologize to me like you mean it. It makes it harder." Henry's gaze held hers. "Harder to do what?" "To hate you," Eleanor said. For a moment, he looked almost amused. Then the fever stole it. Eleanor reached for his hand without thinking. Not the one with the ring, the other. She squeezed gently. "You will stay here," she said. "You will not try to rise. You will drink when I tell you. You will not open the door to anyone." Henry's lips twitched. "As you command," he murmured again, faintly mocking. Eleanor lifted her chin. "Yes, as I command, because you are a terrible patient." Henry's eyelids fluttered. "I've been called worse." Eleanor's voice softened despite herself. "Not by me," he whispered, almost too quiet. "Thank you." Eleanor stood quickly, as if gratitude was dangerous. She gathered what she needed: her bonnet, her gloves, a shawl. She looked at him one more time. He lay still, breathing rough but steady enough for the moment. "If I do not return," Eleanor said, and hated the tremor she could not fully hide. "What will you do?" Henry's eyes opened, and for a moment they were clear. "I will wait," he said. "And if they come, I will not go willingly." Eleanor swallowed. "Try to live." Henry stared at her. "You too." Eleanor left the room and locked it from the outside, a small key that felt suddenly inadequate. Mrs. Pruitt was already in the corridor, as if she had been conjured by the click of the lock. "Morning," the landlady said too brightly. "It is," Eleanor replied. Mrs. Pruitt's eyes flicked to Eleanor's bonnet, then to the closed door. "You have company." "A patient," Eleanor said. "At night," Mrs. Pruitt added, as if she were savoring the word. Eleanor kept her face calm. "He was ill in the street, and now he is ill in my building," Mrs. Pruitt said. "Illness travels. So do stories." Eleanor met her gaze. "If you tell a story that harms me, you will lose your rent." Mrs. Pruitt's eyes widened. Then she narrowed them. "Oh." Eleanor's voice remained even. "I am not threatening you. I am reminding you that I pay on time." Mrs. Pruitt pursed her lips. "You pay," she admitted, "and you don't bring trouble." Eleanor nodded toward the closed door. "I am trying to keep it that way." Mrs. Pruitt leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Those men last night, they were not from around here." "No," Eleanor said. "They spoke like gentlemen," Mrs. Pruitt continued. "Gentlemen do not knock on my doors after midnight unless they expect to get what they want." Eleanor did not answer. Mrs. Pruitt's eyes searched Eleanor's face. "Is he worth it?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "He is a person." Mrs. Pruitt snorted softly. "That was not what I asked." Eleanor turned toward the stairs. "He is ill. That is enough." Mrs. Pruitt's voice followed her. "If the police come, I will say I knew nothing." Eleanor did not look back. "You will say you were asleep." Mrs. Pruitt paused. "And were you?" Eleanor kept walking. "No." Outside, London had fully woken. Street vendors called. Children darted between carts. People moved as if their own errands were the only things keeping the city upright. Eleanor held her chin high and walked toward the address on the note. The nearer she came to that street, the quieter the world became, as if noise itself was discouraged. When she reached the house, She stood before a dark door that seemed to watch her. She raised her hand and knocked. It opened almost immediately. A footman in crisp livery looked down at her with an expression trained to be blank. "Miss Whitmore," he said, as if he had been expecting her all his life. "Yes," Eleanor replied, refusing to flinch. "This way," he said. She stepped inside. The hall was too clean, the air too still. The silence felt expensive. Eleanor followed the footman down a corridor and into a sitting room, where everything was arranged as if no one had ever lived carelessly. A woman stood near the window. She turned at Eleanor's entrance. She was not young, not old, the sort of age that carried authority without effort. Her hair was arranged with precision. Her dress was elegant without display. Her gaze landed on Eleanor and did not waver. "Miss Whitmore," the woman said, voice smooth. "Thank you for coming." Eleanor did not curtsy. She gave a small nod, respectful but not submissive. "Madam," the woman gestured to a chair. "Sit." Eleanor remained standing. "I would prefer to know why I was summoned." The woman's mouth softened, not into kindness but into the polite mask of it. "You are direct." "I have learned it saves time," Eleanor replied. The woman's eyes held hers. "Very well. I am Lady Beatrice Ashford." Eleanor's stomach tightened. She kept her face calm. "I see." Lady Beatrice's gaze flicked over Eleanor's clothing, her gloves, her posture, as if taking inventory. "You have been caring for a gentleman," Lady Beatrice said. Eleanor's voice remained even. "I found a man in the street with a dangerous fever." Lady Beatrice tilted her head slightly. "In the street?" "Yes. In a dark alley," Lady Beatrice added. Eleanor lifted her chin. "Yes." Lady Beatrice watched her for a long moment, then spoke with gentle precision. "Do you understand how such a circumstance might be interpreted?" Eleanor's throat tightened. "I understand how people prefer to interpret a woman's actions when it amuses them." Lady Beatrice's expression remained calm. "And you understand that certain names attract attention." Eleanor's pulse beat harder. "Madam, I do not know names. I know fever." Lady Beatrice's gaze sharpened slightly, as if she recognized the line. "You do not know his identity." Eleanor held her gaze. "No." Lady Beatrice walked a few steps closer, stopping just far enough to maintain distance. "Then you will be relieved to learn that arrangements have been made. The gentleman will receive proper care. You will return to your duties. Your kindness will be acknowledged." Eleanor's fingers curled inside her gloves. "Where is he?" Lady Beatrice's brows lifted a fraction. "You are invested." "I am responsible," Eleanor corrected. "If he is moved while fevered, he may worsen." Lady Beatrice smiled faintly. "Our physicians are capable." Eleanor forced her voice to stay steady. "Then why did your men come to my door at midnight without a physician?" Lady Beatrice's smile did not change, but the air in the room tightened. "You are mistaken." Eleanor met her gaze. "No." Lady Beatrice's eyes remained on Eleanor, as if she were a problem to be solved without raising one's voice. "You are certain the men were ours." "They spoke as if they had authority," Eleanor replied. "They knew my name. They implied harm to my reputation." Lady Beatrice's tone remained mild. "Your reputation is your own responsibility." Eleanor's chest tightened. "I was doing my duty." Lady Beatrice's gaze moved away, as if the conversation bored her now. "Duty is admirable. It is also dangerous when it becomes entangled with matters beyond one's station." Eleanor's temper flared, hot and immediate. She forced it down. "My station," Eleanor said carefully, "does not prevent me from understanding that a fevered man should not be dragged about in the night." Lady Beatrice looked back at her. "Dragged," she repeated softly. Eleanor held her gaze. "Moved." Lady Beatrice nodded as if Eleanor had corrected herself appropriately. "Good. Words matter." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Madam, if the gentleman is safe, then I will return to my duties, but I will not be spoken to as if I have committed a crime by saving a life." Lady Beatrice's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "No one said crime." "Not allowed," Eleanor replied. Lady Beatrice's voice remained calm. "Miss Whitmore, you are a nurse. You will appreciate that recovery requires quiet, privacy, the absence of agitation." Eleanor's fingers tightened. "Then why summon me?" Lady Beatrice stepped closer, lowering her voice slightly. Because the situation must be contained. Contained. Eleanor hated the word. It made her feel like spilled ink being blotted up before it stained something valuable. Lady Beatrice's gaze held hers. You will say nothing of what occurred. Eleanor's chin lifted. I will not gossip. Lady Beatrice's mouth softened again. Not gossip, not speak, not hint. Not allow your landlady, your neighbors, your colleagues to turn this into something it is not. Eleanor's voice tightened. Then perhaps your men should not have knocked on my door like debt collectors. Lady Beatrice's eyes flashed for the first time, quick as a whip, then vanished under calm. You are bold. I am tired, Eleanor replied, and surprised herself with the honesty. Lady Beatrice studied her. You saw something. Eleanor's breath caught. I saw a fevered man. Lady Beatrice's gaze did not move. You saw marks. Eleanor's hands went cold. She kept her face steady. Marks from illness, perhaps. From work. Lady Beatrice's voice lowered. Work. Eleanor heard the judgment in that single word, as if it could stain an entire bloodline. I do not know, Eleanor said. I did not interrogate him. Lady Beatrice watched her for a long moment. Then she turned away slightly, as if deciding the angle from which to deliver the next sentence. You will be compensated, she said, for your inconvenience. Eleanor's stomach tightened. Compensated. Lady Beatrice nodded, as if it were generous. A sum, enough to ensure you do not suffer for your decision. Eleanor's voice went quiet, dangerous. You mean enough to ensure I keep my mouth shut. Lady Beatrice's eyes returned to Eleanor's face. I mean enough to protect you. You have no idea how quickly a woman can be ruined by a whisper. Eleanor held her gaze. I have a very clear idea. Lady Beatrice's mouth tightened slightly. Then accept protection while it is offered. Eleanor's heartbeat thudded in her ears. She thought of Henry on her bed, his fever, his warning. Not them. She drew a slow breath. No. Lady Beatrice blinked once. No? Eleanor kept her voice steady. I will not accept money for doing what I was trained to do. Lady Beatrice's tone remained polite. Do not be childish. Eleanor felt anger flare again. Do not be insulting. Lady Beatrice's eyes cooled. You are in a house where you do not belong, speaking to a woman you should address with deference. Eleanor's fingers curled. I am addressing you with honesty. Lady Beatrice's voice softened dangerously. Honesty is not always rewarded. Eleanor met her gaze. Neither is obedience. A silence fell. Lady Beatrice studied Eleanor as if seeing her properly for the first time. Not as a nurse, as a complication. Very well, Lady Beatrice said at last, and the words sounded like a door closing. You will return to your work. You will say nothing. If anyone asks, you found a stranger and did what any decent woman would do. Eleanor's throat tightened. And the gentleman. Lady Beatrice's gaze did not soften. He is not your concern. Eleanor's voice sharpened. He was my concern when he could not stand. Lady Beatrice's expression remained smooth. He is not your concern now. Eleanor held her gaze. Then why does my name appear on your lips? Lady Beatrice's eyes narrowed a fraction. Because you were there. Eleanor's chest tightened. And you wish I had not been. Lady Beatrice did not deny it. We all wish for many things. Eleanor felt suddenly sharply outnumbered by walls and wealth and rules. She forced her voice calm. If that is all, madam, I will go. Lady Beatrice nodded. You will. Eleanor turned toward the door. Lady Beatrice's voice followed her, gentle as poison. Miss Whitmore. Eleanor stopped but did not turn. Be wise, Lady Beatrice said. Wisdom is knowing when your virtue is being used against you. Eleanor's fingers tightened in her gloves. And wisdom, she replied without looking back, is knowing when someone is trying to buy silence with politeness. She left. Outside, the city noise returned in layers, as if London had been waiting for her to be released from that quiet prison. She walked quickly, not running, refusing to look like prey. By the time she reached the infirmary, her jaw ached from holding her face steady. Mr. Hale looked up from his desk, eyes widening when he saw her. You're late, he said, then frowned. You look tired, Eleanor said. He lowered his voice. There are people asking for you. Eleanor's stomach dropped. Who? Mr. Hale glanced toward the corridor. The matron? And Dr. Pembroke. Eleanor's mouth went dry. She went down the corridor, her steps controlled. The matron's office door was closed. Eleanor knocked. "Come in," came the sharp voice. Eleanor entered. The matron sat behind her desk like a judge. Dr. Pembroke stood near the window, hands folded, face arranged into professional concern. Eleanor's chest tightened. "Miss Whitmore," the matron said. "Sit." Eleanor remained standing. "Yes, ma'am?" The matron's lips thinned. "There are reports." Eleanor's pulse hammered. "Reports of what?" Dr. Pembroke spoke gently. "Miss Whitmore, we only wish to clarify a matter before it becomes unmanageable." Eleanor's gaze flicked to him. "Clarify." The matron's eyes were hard. "It has been said you were seen returning to your lodging with a gentleman late last night." Eleanor kept her face calm. "I found a man in the street suffering from fever. I brought him to safety." The matron's mouth tightened. "To your room." "It was the nearest place where I could keep him warm and give him water," Eleanor replied. "I am a nurse, that is what I do." Dr. Pembroke's eyes did not meet hers. "And you did not send for a physician?" Eleanor felt anger flare. "At midnight? With a man whose condition was unstable, while two strangers knocked on my door and hinted at scandal if I refused them?" The matron's eyebrows lifted. "Strangers knocked on your door?" "Yes," Eleanor said. "They asked for him?" Dr. Pembroke's voice remained calm. "And you refused?" "Yes," Eleanor repeated, "because he was dangerously ill." The matron leaned forward. "Miss Whitmore, do you understand what this looks like?" Eleanor's hands curled. "It looks like a nurse saving a life." The matron's voice sharpened. "It looks like impropriety." Eleanor's throat tightened. "That is an assumption." The matron's eyes narrowed. "Assumptions are how reputations are destroyed." Eleanor's breath caught at the cruel familiarity of the sentence. Dr. Pembroke cleared his throat. "Miss Whitmore, you are skilled. No one doubts your competence. But your situation—" "My situation," Eleanor repeated, voice tight, "is that I did my duty and now I am being punished for it." The matron's expression hardened. "You are being protected from your own poor judgment." Eleanor stared at her. "Protected by being dismissed." The matron did not flinch. "Temporarily relieved, until inquiries are complete." Eleanor felt the room tilt. Inquiries by whom? The matron's gaze flicked to Dr. Pembroke. He spoke quietly. "By those who have an interest in the gentleman's welfare." Eleanor's chest tightened. "So it is true, he is important." The matron's lips thinned. "You will not speak of it." Eleanor's voice went cold. "You are not my mistress. You are my employer. And you will remember your place," the matron snapped. Eleanor held her gaze. "My place is beside the sick." The matron's face reddened. "Not when you bring scandal into this institution." Eleanor's voice trembled despite her effort. "There was no scandal until people decided to invent one." Dr. Pembroke finally looked at her, his expression strained. "Miss Whitmore, go home. Rest. Let the matter be handled. You will be contacted." Eleanor heard the finality. Not a suggestion, a dismissal. She drew a breath. "Will I be paid?" The matron's mouth tightened. "Not until you are reinstated." Eleanor's fingers went numb. Rent, coal, food, everything balanced on those wages. Dr. Pembroke's voice softened. "Miss Whitmore, please, do not make this worse." Eleanor looked at him and something in her broke into clarity. "You have been spoken to," she said quietly. Dr. Pembroke's jaw tightened. "I have been consulted." Eleanor nodded slowly. "And you chose your side?" Dr. Pembroke's voice dropped. "My side is the side of stability." Eleanor's smile was small and bitter. "Stability for whom?" The matron rapped her knuckles on the desk. "That will be enough. You may go." Eleanor stood very still for a moment, then nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." She left the office. The corridor felt longer than it ever had. Faces that normally greeted her turned away. A few eyes watched her with the eager hunger of rumor. Mr. Hale caught up to her near the door. "Miss Whitmore," he whispered. "Is it true?" Eleanor swallowed. "It is true that a man was ill." He looked pained. "And the rest?" Eleanor held his gaze. "The rest is what people tell themselves." Mr. Hale's jaw tightened. "This is unfair." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Unfair is common." He lowered his voice. "Will you be all right?" Eleanor almost laughed. "No." Then softer, she added, But I will stand. She stepped outside. The walk back to her lodging felt like walking through a crowd that could not see her properly anymore. She was still Eleanor Whitmore, yet already she could feel herself being rewritten by mouths and glances. When she reached the building, Mrs. Pruitt was at the bottom of the stairs, wiping a cup that did not need wiping. "Back early," the landlady said. Eleanor's voice was tight. "Has anyone been to my door?" Mrs. Pruitt's eyes widened a fraction. "Not that I saw." Eleanor stared at her. "Not that you saw." Mrs. Pruitt sniffed. "I have chores, Miss Whitmore. I cannot watch your door all day." Eleanor moved past her without another word. Upstairs, her corridor felt wrong before she even reached her room. The air held a faint draft as if something had been opened. Her stomach clenched. She hurried the last steps and stopped. Her door was not fully closed, just a sliver. Eleanor's pulse hammered. She reached for the latch and pushed it open. Inside, nothing was smashed. Nothing shouted disorder, but it was not right. The chair by the bed was turned slightly, as if someone had sat and risen in a hurry. Her small drawer was not fully shut. The blanket on the bed was folded differently, and the bed was empty. Eleanor's breath caught. She crossed the room in 3 steps and stared at the rumpled pillow where Henry's head had been. She spun, scanning the floor, the washstand, the chair. His coat was gone. The ring, she told herself, did not matter. It was on his hand. The man mattered. Eleanor's hands trembled as she searched, not for money or valuables, but for any sign of what had happened. A note, a thread, a trace. Nothing. Then she saw it. On her small table near the lamp, perfectly placed, lay a card as if it had always belonged there. Eleanor approached it slowly, dread rising like cold water. The card was heavy, expensive, the print crisp. She read the name once, then again. Sir Alistair Crane. Below it in smaller letters, requests the honour of Nurse Whitmore's presence. Eleanor did not sit down. She stood over the card as if it were a small creature that had crawled onto her table and dared her to touch it. Sir Alistair Crane. The name felt too elegant for the harm it promised. She read it again, then forced herself to breathe. Someone had been in her room. Someone had taken Henry. Someone had the audacity to leave a polite invitation afterward. Eleanor's hands trembled once. She pressed them flat on the table until they steadied. "Think," she told herself out loud, because her own voice was the only thing in the room that still belonged to her. She went to the door and called down the corridor. "Mrs. Pruitt." No answer. Eleanor went to the stairs and called again, louder. Mrs. Pruitt appeared at the bottom step, wiping her hands on her apron, as if she had been waiting for the right moment to look innocent. "What is it now?" the landlady said too quickly. Eleanor descended with controlled steps. "Someone entered my room." Mrs. Pruitt's eyes widened theatrically. "Entered?" "Yes." Mrs. Pruitt pressed a hand to her chest. "That's dreadful." Eleanor stopped on the last step. "Do not play at dread. Who was it?" Mrs. Pruitt's mouth tightened. "I told you, I can't watch your door all day." Eleanor's voice turned quiet. "You can watch it long enough to collect rent." Mrs. Pruitt's eyes flicked away. "There was a gentleman." Eleanor's stomach clenched. "Describe him." "Tidy?" Mrs. Pruitt said, licking her lips. "Not young, not old. A fine coat, a fine voice. He asked for you by name." "Did he give a name?" Eleanor pressed. Mrs. Pruitt hesitated. "He didn't need to." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "Did he pay you?" Mrs. Pruitt's face reddened. "How dare you?" Eleanor held her gaze. "Did he pay you?" Mrs. Pruitt's mouth twisted. "He put a coin in my hand for the trouble. He said he only needed to retrieve a guest who had become confused. He said it was for the best." "For the best," Eleanor echoed, her voice cold. "And you believed him." Mrs. Pruitt bristled. "He spoke like a gentleman." Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Gentlemen do not remove fevered men from beds without a nurse." Mrs. Pruitt looked uncertain for the first time. "He said there was a physician waiting." Eleanor's pulse hammered. "Did you see a physician?" Mrs. Pruitt's cheeks puffed. "I saw 2 men." Eleanor closed her eyes for a single beat. 2 men, the same number as last night. When she opened them, her voice was controlled. "Mrs. Pruitt, listen carefully. If anyone asks, you do not know who was in my room. You did not see a face, you did not hear a name. Mrs. Pruitt's eyes widened. Now why would I do that? Because, Eleanor said, each word clipped. If my name is dragged through the mud, your building will not be spared. People do not distinguish between a scandal and the stairs it climbed. Mrs. Pruitt swallowed. I rent rooms. That's all. And I pay rent, Eleanor replied. That is all. Mrs. Pruitt's mouth tightened. What will you do? Eleanor held up the card. I will attend the invitation. Mrs. Pruitt sucked in a breath. Alone? Eleanor's gaze sharpened. Would you like to accompany me? Mrs. Pruitt recoiled as if Eleanor had offered her a plague blanket. Of course not. Eleanor nodded once. Then keep your curtains shut. She turned and went back upstairs. Inside her room, she put on her bonnet with deliberate calm. She did not dress like a woman going to plead. She dressed like a nurse going to demand the return of her patient. The card did not list an address, but Eleanor recognized that kind of card. It meant a message would follow. It meant she was expected to wait and obey. She did neither. She turned the card over, a faint imprint. The pressure of a pen had left a trace from whatever had been written atop it before. Eleanor tilted it toward the lamp. There. A few letters. A street name, half visible. It was enough. She left her room, locked the door, and descended again. Mrs. Pruitt called after her. If you make trouble, don't make it here. Eleanor did not look back. That depends on who insists on bringing it here. The walk took her into quieter parts of London again, where the pavement looked cleaner and the windows looked less curious. She did not slow. She did not admire. She did not let the grandeur make her small. The house she reached had no sign. It did not need one. A footman opened the door as if Eleanor's arrival had been timed. Nurse Whitmore, he said. Eleanor's throat tightened at the certainty. Yes. This way, he replied. She followed him down a corridor to a room that was meant to soothe and intimidate at once. Comfortable chairs, soft light, the smell of polished wood. Sir Alistair Crane stood near a writing desk. He turned with an easy smile, as if they were acquaintances, and Eleanor had stopped by for tea. Miss Whitmore, he said warmly, how good of you to come. Eleanor did not offer her hand. Where is he? Crane's smile remained. Straight to business. Where is my patient? Eleanor repeated. Crane gestured toward a chair. Please sit. You must be exhausted. Eleanor stayed standing. I am not here for comfort. Crane's eyes held hers, assessing. No, I can see that. He moved to the desk and picked up a folded document, as if to give his hand something calm to do. Let us put you at ease, Crane said. The gentleman is safe. He is receiving excellent care. Eleanor's voice was flat. Safe from whom? Crane's smile widened slightly. From the streets, from rumor, from the well-meaning decisions of people who do not understand the stakes. Eleanor's hands curled inside her gloves. You removed him from my room. Crane's brows rose a fraction, a performance of surprise. We retrieved him, yes. It was necessary. Necessary to remove a fevered man without speaking to the nurse who was keeping him alive, Eleanor said. Crane's tone remained pleasant. You did admirable work, truly, but your circumstances were not appropriate. Appropriate, Eleanor echoed. You mean poor? Crane's smile softened, almost sympathetic. I mean vulnerable. You cannot possibly wish to be the subject of public discussion. Eleanor stared at him. You began the discussion by sending men to my door and implying disgrace. Crane's gaze did not flinch. Society notices what society notices. Eleanor's jaw tightened. So you say. And if society notices too much, you intend to blame me for being seen. Crane leaned lightly against the desk. Miss Whitmore, you are clever. That is both a strength and a danger. Eleanor took a step closer. Tell me his condition. Tell me where he is. Or tell me why you think you can order me like a servant. Crane's eyes cooled slightly. You are not a servant. Eleanor's mouth tightened. Then treat me like a professional. Crane paused, then nodded as if conceding something. Very well, he is stable. He is resting. He is under medical supervision. Eleanor pressed. Can I see him? Crane's smile returned, practiced. That would be unwise. Unwise for whom? Eleanor demanded. For him or for you? Crane's gaze sharpened. For you. Eleanor let out a short, humorless breath. You keep saying that as if you care. Crane's voice softened. I do care. I am offering you a path that leaves you unhurt. Eleanor stared at him. And what is the cost of that path? Crane lifted the document in his hand. A simple statement. You found a stranger. You acted as you were trained. You did not know his identity. You did not see anything unusual. You will sign it and you will return to your post with your reputation intact. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. And if I do not sign? Crane's expression stayed calm. Then you may find that positions are hard to come by for a woman whom gossip finds interesting. Eleanor's throat tightened. I was dismissed this morning. Crane's brows lifted. Dismissed? How unfortunate. Eleanor's gaze held his. Not unfortunate. Convenient. Crane's smile thinned slightly. The world is full of unfortunate conveniences. Eleanor stepped closer still, close enough to make the air between them feel like a line. You want my silence, she said. But you also want my agreement that I saw nothing. Crane's eyes remained steady. I want you protected. Eleanor's voice grew sharper. Protected from the truth. Crane's tone remained gentle. Protected from consequences. Eleanor's fingers tightened. Then let the consequences come to you. Crane's smile returned, and it was almost fond. Ah, there it is. The moral fire. Very appealing in novels, less appealing in real life. Eleanor's face went still. Do not speak to me as if I am entertainment. Crane's gaze flicked toward the door, then back to her. Miss Whitmore, you are under strain. You are tired. You are drawn into something you do not understand. Let me pull you out. Eleanor's voice dropped, firm and quiet. You did not pull me out. You pushed me down. Crane's eyes narrowed slightly, then relaxed again. You are angry. I am afraid, Eleanor corrected. And I am refusing to let fear make me obedient. Crane studied her, and for the first time the charm looked like work. You did see something, he said. Eleanor's pulse jumped. She kept her face neutral. I saw fever. Crane stepped away from the desk and walked slowly, as if giving his words room to land. You saw marks, he said. Eleanor's hands went cold. She said nothing. Crane continued softly. A nurse sees marks and imagines a story, and stories become dangerous. Eleanor lifted her chin. If the marks have an innocent explanation, then you have no reason to fear my imagination. Crane smiled faintly. Innocence is a matter of interpretation. Eleanor's voice tightened. So you fear interpretation more than illness? Crane's eyes held hers. Illness can be treated, interpretation cannot. Eleanor's breath caught. She forced it out slowly. Where is he? She asked again, and this time her voice carried something steadier than anger. It carried authority. Crane regarded her. You care for him? He was alone, Eleanor replied. I do not leave people alone when they're dying. Crane's expression shifted slightly, as if a new thought had entered. How very inconvenient. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Enough. Crane walked back to the desk and set the statement down. Sign it. Eleanor did not move. No. Crane's smile vanished. It did not become cruel. It became empty. Then you will lose more than a position, he said quietly. Eleanor felt her stomach drop, but she did not show it. Are you threatening me, Sir Alistair? Crane's gaze stayed on hers. I am describing the world. Eleanor's voice trembled only at the edges. Then I will describe it too. A man collapsed in a London alley. You call it a world, I call it a failing. Crane stared at her for a long beat. Then he said, almost softly, You are very brave. Eleanor's hands clenched. No, I am trapped. Crane's eyes flicked down briefly, as if he heard something in her voice he did not expect. Then he spoke with renewed smoothness. Miss Whitmore, let us try again. You will sign the statement. In exchange, your dismissal will be reversed. Your rent will be discreetly covered for the next year, and you will never be troubled by this again. Eleanor blinked. My rent. Crane's smile returned. You see, practical matters. The kind that truly ruin people. Eleanor's throat tightened. She hated that he knew. She hated that he could name her fear so accurately. She drew a breath. You cannot purchase my conscience. Crane's eyes held hers. Everyone has a price. Eleanor's voice sharpened. That is what men like you tell yourselves, so you can sleep. Crane's smile thinned. Careful. Eleanor stepped back slightly, as if choosing her next words with the precision he demanded. I will not sign, she said, and I will not accept your money. If my work is to be taken from me because I saved a life, then let it be taken in daylight with witnesses, so the world may see what it does. Crane watched her. You believe the world cares. I believe, Eleanor said quietly, that the world learns when truth is stubborn. Crane's gaze cooled again. Truth is whatever survives. Eleanor held his stare. Then I intend to survive. A silence stretched. Crane sighed, as if tired of a child's defiance. He reached for a bell on the desk. Eleanor's chest tightened. If you call men in here, Crane pressed the bell once. I am calling for someone who will calm you. Eleanor's jaw tightened. No one calms me with bells. The door opened. A young servant entered, eyes lowered. Sir, the servant murmured. Crane's gaze did not leave Eleanor. Send him in. The servant hesitated. He is not... Crane's voice sharpened slightly, still controlled. Now. The servant bowed and withdrew. Eleanor's pulse hammered. Crane turned his head slightly as if listening for footsteps. You are making a mistake, he said. Eleanor's voice was low. That is what powerful men say when someone refuses to lie for them. Crane's eyes narrowed. I could have had you escorted out. Eleanor's chin lifted. You still could. Crane's smile returned, faint. No, I think I prefer you in front of me, where I can see what you might do. Eleanor's hands curled. I am not a threat. Crane's gaze slid over her calmly. Everyone is a threat if they are inconvenient enough. The door opened again. A boy stepped in. Not a footman, not a clerk. A street lad, maybe 14, hair brushed but still rebellious, eyes too sharp for a place like this. He looked at Eleanor first. Recognition flared in his face. Miss Whitmore, he blurted, then caught himself and bowed awkwardly. Eleanor stared. Tom Quinn. Crane's mouth twitched faintly, as if amused by Eleanor's surprise. You know him. I do, Eleanor said, her confusion rising. What is he doing here? Tom's gaze flicked to Crane, then back to Eleanor. I work errands, he said quickly. Messages. Carrying. Whatever they tell me. Eleanor's chest tightened. Why are you here now? Tom swallowed. His hands were clenched at his sides as if holding himself steady. Crane spoke smoothly. Tom has brought something that may persuade you to stop imagining stories. Tom's eyes widened slightly at the word imagining, and Eleanor saw anger there, quick and bright. Eleanor looked at Tom. What did you bring? Tom hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small book. A ledger. Worn. Not expensive. The kind of book that lived near charity beds and soup lines. He held it out to Eleanor. Crane said, You may look. Eleanor did not take it immediately. Where did you get that? Tom blurted. I didn't steal it. I swear. Eleanor softened her voice. I did not accuse you. I'm asking whose it is. Tom's eyes flicked to Crane again, wary. They sent me to fetch it from a clinic, to bring it here. Eleanor's stomach tightened. Why? Crane answered for him. Because it contains an error that must be corrected. Eleanor's gaze snapped to Crane. An error. Crane's smile was slight. A record of visits under a name that should not be recorded. Eleanor's pulse jumped. She looked at Tom. Did you open it? Tom's mouth tightened. I can read, miss. Eleanor's throat tightened with pride and fear. What did you see? Tom swallowed. A name. The one you weren't supposed to know. Eleanor's hand finally reached out and took the ledger. Her fingers shook as she opened it. There were entries, dates, notes in a plain hand, names of patients, and among them a repeated signature that made her stomach drop. Not Henry Ashford. Another name. A false one. But the handwriting was consistent. The visits were regular. It was not a one-time charity appearance for applause. It was a habit, a life lived in quiet. Eleanor looked up at Crane. So the marks I saw, Crane's eyes narrowed slightly, were the result of his private interests. Eleanor's voice tightened. Private interests in helping the poor. Crane's smile became thinner. You say it as if it is noble. It is, Eleanor replied. Crane's gaze sharpened. Nobility is not the issue. Exposure is. Eleanor's heart beat hard. She looked down at the ledger again, then at Tom. Tom, she said quietly, why did you bring this to me? Tom's eyes flashed. Because you helped my mum when no one did. And because he helped people too. I saw him once. Not close, but I saw him. He came with his hat pulled down, but he spoke gentle. Not like them. Tom jerked his head slightly toward Crane without daring to be too obvious. Crane's expression remained smooth. Mind your tongue, boy. Tom stiffened, then said quickly, and because last night I saw a carriage. Eleanor's breath caught. You saw one. Tom nodded, eyes fixed on Eleanor. In the side street near your place. 2 men with a coat like proper servants. And someone between them, not walking right like he was half asleep. Eleanor's hand tightened on the ledger. You saw them take him. Tom nodded again. I didn't know it was him at first, but then I saw the way his hand held his coat, like he was guarding something. Eleanor's stomach twisted. The ring. Crane's voice remained calm. Enough. This is going nowhere useful. Eleanor turned on him. This is going exactly where it must. You removed a sick man from my care. Crane's eyes cooled. We removed a man from a situation that could have destroyed him. Eleanor stepped forward. Destroyed him by being seen with a nurse who saved his life. Crane's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Eleanor's voice rose not into shouting but into a steady force. You want me to sign a lie so you can keep him contained, as Lady Beatrice said. But the ledger is not my imagination. It is a record. Your record, your problem. Crane's smile returned, brittle. Miss Whitmore, you are forgetting something. Eleanor held his gaze. What? Crane spoke softly. Records can disappear. Witnesses can be persuaded. Positions can be denied. Eleanor's chest tightened, but her eyes did not drop. Then you confirm what I feared. You are not concerned with his health, you are concerned with control. Crane's gaze remained on hers. I am concerned with the crown. Eleanor's voice went cold. Then perhaps the crown should be concerned with you. A silence fell. Then from beyond the door Eleanor heard a sound. A cough. Not loud, not violent. A restrained, tired cough. Her heart lurched. The door opened, and Henry Ashford stepped in. He was steadier than he had been, but still pale, still carrying the remnants of fever like a shadow on his face. A man in a physician's coat hovered behind him, anxious, as if prepared to catch him. Henry's gaze went first to Eleanor. It held exhaustion. It also held something else. Relief. Eleanor, he said, voice rough. Crane turned toward him with a smile that snapped back into place. Your Highness, this is precisely what I wish to prevent. Henry's eyes moved to Crane. I know. Crane's voice stayed gentle. You should be resting. Henry's mouth tightened. I rested. Then I woke and asked where I was, and I was told a nurse would be persuaded to sign a statement. Crane's smile did not falter. A protective statement. Henry's gaze hardened. A lie. Eleanor's breath caught. Crane's eyes flicked to Eleanor, then back to Henry. We are managing a delicate situation. Henry took a slow step forward. The physician behind him murmured, Sir, please. Henry lifted a hand slightly and the physician fell silent. Henry's gaze returned to Eleanor. You should not have come. Eleanor's voice came out tight. You were taken from my room. Henry's jaw tightened. I was moved, against your will, Eleanor said. Henry's eyes flicked to Crane. Yes. Crane's smile thinned. Your Highness, I acted to prevent scandal. Henry's voice was low. You acted to prevent me from speaking. A pause. Crane's expression remained polite. You are unwell. Fever makes men dramatic. Henry's eyes sharpened. Do not speak of my mind as if it belongs to you. Crane bowed his head slightly. As you wish. Henry turned fully toward Eleanor then, and for a moment the room felt smaller, as if the walls leaned in to listen. I owe you, Henry said. Eleanor's throat tightened. You owe me nothing. You were ill. Henry's gaze held hers. You carried me. You kept men from my door. You did not take my ring when you could have. Crane's eyes flicked sharply at the mention of the ring. Henry did not look at him. Eleanor felt her cheeks warm. I am not a thief. Henry nodded. I know. Eleanor's voice trembled faintly. Why were you in that alley? Henry's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the physician as if to confirm privacy, then back to Eleanor. I went where I was not expected, he said quietly, and I paid for it. Eleanor's hand tightened on the ledger. This book. Henry's gaze dropped to it. Something like sadness crossed his face. That, Henry said, is the part of my life they call a mistake. Eleanor swallowed. Helping people. Henry's eyes returned to hers. They call it reckless. They call it humiliating. They call it dangerous. Eleanor's voice sharpened. But you kept doing it. Henry's mouth tightened. Yes. Crane stepped in smoothly. Your Highness, this is not the time. Henry's gaze snapped to him. When is the time, Alistair? When I am silent again. Crane's eyes cooled. Your Highness. Henry's voice grew steadier, as if speaking restored some strength. Do you know what happened last night? I collapsed, alone, in a city full of people, and the person who saved me was the person you are now trying to frighten into lying. Crane's smile was gone now. We are trying to protect her. Henry's eyes narrowed. No, you are trying to protect yourselves from being inconvenienced by a nurse who saw the truth. Eleanor's pulse hammered. She looked between them, stunned by the open conflict. Crane's voice remained controlled. Your Highness, your health... Henry cut him off. My health is not your tool. The physician behind Henry cleared his throat gently. Sir, perhaps we should... Henry lifted his hand again. Not yet. His gaze returned to Eleanor, and his voice softened, restrained, almost formal. Miss Whitmore, he said, and the use of her title and name sounded like a deliberate correction to everyone in the room. I apologize for what has been done to you. Eleanor's chest tightened. Apology does not return my position. Henry's jaw tightened. It will. Crane's eyes flicked to Henry, warning. Henry ignored it. Eleanor swallowed. They dismissed me. Henry's gaze held hers. You will be reinstated. Eleanor felt anger and relief collide, and she forced herself not to lean on either. And what will I be expected to say? Henry's mouth tightened. Only what is true. Crane's voice sharpened slightly. Your Highness, Henry turned to him. No more statements, no more tidy lies. You have made enough arrangements in my name. Crane's face remained composed, but his eyes were bright with contained fury. You are making this worse. Henry's voice went quiet. Worse for whom? Crane did not answer. Henry looked back at Eleanor. You asked why I was in that alley. I cannot explain everything in this room. Eleanor's fingers tightened. Then explain what you can. Henry nodded once. I have been trying to do good without being used as a symbol. Some people decided they would rather manage me than understand me. Eleanor's gaze slid briefly to Crane. Henry continued, voice steady. Last night I refused an arrangement. I walked out. I thought I could go where I pleased. The fever made me foolish. I collapsed. And you found me. Eleanor's throat tightened. And the marks. Henry's eyes lowered for a moment. The marks are a record of years, not of scandal, of service. Eleanor's voice softened despite herself. Then why hide it? Henry's jaw tightened. Because it is not mine to turn into a story. The poor do not need a prince's face to approve their suffering. They need help. Eleanor's eyes stung unexpectedly. She blinked it away. You sound like someone who has listened. Henry's gaze lifted. I have. Crane stepped forward again, voice smooth but strained. Your Highness, this is dangerous. If it becomes known... Henry looked at him. If it becomes known that I visited clinics and held children while physicians worked. If it becomes known that I carried supplies and used a false name to avoid spectacle. If it becomes known that a nurse saved my life. Crane's jaw tightened. Yes. Henry's voice grew colder. Then perhaps it should be known. A silence fell again, heavier this time. Eleanor's heart beat hard. Where does that leave me? Henry's gaze returned to her. It softened. His voice lowered. It leaves you, he said. As the person who did not flatter me, did not fear me enough to abandon me, and did not sell me when you could have. Eleanor's breath caught. I did what was right. Henry nodded. And that is precisely why I cannot allow them to crush you. Eleanor's throat tightened. You cannot order the world to be fair. Henry's mouth tightened. No, but I can choose what I do next. Crane's eyes narrowed. Your Highness. Henry did not look at him. He looked at Eleanor. His voice was restrained, careful, and yet it carried a weight that made Eleanor feel as if the room had tilted toward them. I will not offer you secrecy, Henry said. I will not offer you charity. I will offer you my name spoken honestly in whatever rooms it must be spoken, and I will offer you my respect, which will not be withdrawn when convenience demands it." Eleanor's hands trembled. She hated it. She wanted to be steady. She forced herself to meet his gaze. "Respect is not a shield," she said quietly. "Not for women like me." Henry's eyes held hers. "Then I will stand where the blows fall and take them with you." Crane's voice snapped, still controlled but unmistakably sharp. "This is absurd." Eleanor's gaze flicked to Crane. "Absurd that a prince should speak like a man." Henry's mouth twitched faintly, then sobered. He stepped half a pace closer, as if he would not cross the line too quickly. "Eleanor," he said, and it was the first time he used her given name in full clarity, not fever. "Will you allow me to see you again?" Her breath caught. Crane made a quiet sound of disbelief. The physician looked uncomfortable, then looked away, as if choosing not to be part of it. Eleanor's chest tightened. She could feel the trap in the question. If she said yes, she would be accused of ambition. If she said no, she would be left alone against the same machinery that had already started to grind. She lifted her chin. "I will not be anyone's secret." Henry's gaze did not waver. "Nor would I ask you to be." Eleanor's voice was steady now, hard-earned. "Then if you mean what you say, you will do it in the light." Henry nodded once. "Yes." Eleanor's fingers tightened on the ledger. No more notes under doors. No more men in corridors. Henry's jaw tightened. "No more." Eleanor's eyes held his. "And you will not let them make my work vanish because it is convenient." Henry's voice was quiet, absolute. "I will not." Crane's face went still, as if calculating. "Your Highness, you cannot promise—" Henry turned to him, and his voice cut cleanly through the room without raising volume. "I can," he said, "and I have." Eleanor drew a breath that felt like the first full breath in days. Henry's gaze returned to her and softened again. "You should go home. Rest. I will send word to the infirmary before nightfall." Eleanor blinked. "Send word how?" with another seal. Henry's mouth tightened, then his eyes softened. "With truth." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Then I will hold you to it." Henry's expression shifted, faint warmth beneath exhaustion. "Please do." Eleanor turned toward the door. Tom took a quick step after her. "Miss Whitmore." She looked at him. Tom's voice was low. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." Eleanor's throat tightened. "You came at all. That matters." Tom nodded quickly, eyes shining, then stepped back. Eleanor looked at Henry one last time. He stood straighter than his fever deserved, as if stubbornness could be used for good. Eleanor's voice lowered. "Drink your water." Henry's mouth twitched. "As you command." Eleanor surprised herself by smiling, small and brief. Then she left the room with her head high, carrying the strange, steady knowledge that for the first time since the alley, someone powerful had chosen the light with her. Eleanor returned to her lodging, as if her feet were made of borrowed courage. Mrs. Pruitt was in the hallway again, of course, pretending to fix a picture that had been straight for years. "Well?" the landlady demanded in a whisper. "Did you get yourself arrested in a grand house?" Eleanor kept her voice calm. "No." Mrs. Pruitt's eyes narrowed. "Did they pay you?" "No." Mrs. Pruitt looked offended on Eleanor's behalf. "Then what was the point?" "The point," Eleanor said, unlocking her door, "is that I will not be handled." Mrs. Pruitt leaned in. "And him?" Eleanor paused. "He is alive." Mrs. Pruitt's expression changed just a little. "Is he who I think?" Eleanor's hand tightened on the key. "If you value your peace, you will stop thinking." Mrs. Pruitt sniffed. "My peace is expensive. So is my reputation," Eleanor replied, and entered her room. Inside, everything looked ordinary again, which felt like an insult. Ordinary furniture, ordinary walls, ordinary life. And yet her life had been turned inside out by a fevered man and a crest pressed into wax. She sat for the first time that day, hands in her lap, forcing her breath to slow. Then she heard a light knock at the door. Eleanor's spine went rigid. "Who is it?" she called. "It's Tom," came the boy's voice, quick and urgent. "Miss Whitmore, please." Eleanor opened the door a fraction. Tom slipped in as if the hallway might swallow him. He was flushed from running, hair wind-tossed despite his attempt at neatness. "Tom!" Eleanor said. "What is it?" He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. "He said to give you this. Not them, him." Eleanor stared at the paper. No crest, no seal, just a plain fold. Her fingers were unsteady as she took it. "Did you read it?" Tom shook his head hard. "No, miss." Eleanor nodded once. "Good." Tom watched her. "Are you all right?" Eleanor almost laughed. "No, but I'm still standing." Tom's eyes shone. "That's what my mum said. She said you're like a post in the ground. Everything can push, but you don't move." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Tell your mother I'm glad she thinks so." Tom hesitated. "He's really going to speak, miss. I heard it. They're all in a twist. Sir Alister's been snapping at everyone, and Lady Beatrice—" Eleanor held up a hand. "Tom, you've done enough. Go home." Tom frowned. "But—" "Go," Eleanor repeated, softer. "I need you safe." Tom's jaw tightened with pride. "Yes, miss." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Miss Whitmore." "Yes." Tom's voice dropped. "He looked at you like you were the only honest thing in that room." Eleanor swallowed. "Good night, Tom." Tom nodded and slipped out. Eleanor locked the door, leaned her forehead against it for one breath, then crossed to the table and unfolded the paper. The writing was unmistakable. "Miss Whitmore, at 11 tomorrow, I will speak in the small receiving room at Ashford House. You will be present as my guest, not as anyone's servant. Your position will be restored before noon. Your rent will not be discussed by anyone. If you choose not to come, I will still speak. But I would rather not speak without you where I can see you, steady as you were when I could not stand." Henry Eleanor read it twice, then a third time, because the simplicity of it felt like a miracle and a trap at once. Her hands tightened on the paper. "A guest," she whispered. It sounded impossible. The next morning, the matron sent for her. Eleanor arrived at the infirmary with her shoulders squared, even though she had no wages and no certainty. The matron sat behind her desk like a fortress. Dr. Pembroke stood by the window again, as if windows were the only place he could breathe. The matron's voice was clipped. "Miss Whitmore, sit." Eleanor remained standing. "No, ma'am." The matron's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me. I will stand," Eleanor said quietly, "as you have required me to stand alone for doing my duty." Dr. Pembroke cleared his throat. "Miss Whitmore?" Eleanor looked at him. "Doctor, are you here to advise or to witness?" His mouth tightened. "To witness." The matron snapped. "Witness what?" Before Eleanor could answer, Mr. Hale opened the office door, breathless. "Matron," he said. "A messenger." The matron's nostrils flared. "What now?" A footman entered, stiff and formal, holding an envelope with no crest. He bowed slightly, as if everyone in the room should be honored, not only the matron. "Madam," he said, "a notice." The matron took it with suspicion, broke it open, and read. Her face changed as she read. Color drained, then returned darker with anger. She looked up at Eleanor as if Eleanor had conjured the letter. "What is this?" the matron demanded. Eleanor kept her voice even. "Read it aloud." The matron's mouth tightened. "It states that Miss Eleanor Whitmore is reinstated immediately, with full pay to be made current. It states—" her eyes moved down the page. "It states that any further discussion of her private life will be considered an insult." Dr. Pembroke's jaw tightened. Eleanor's heart beat hard. She did not let herself smile. The matron's voice sharpened. "Who sent this?" Eleanor met her gaze. "Someone who understands that a nurse's reputation is not a toy." Dr. Pembroke spoke carefully. "Miss Whitmore, you are to go to Ashford House." The matron snapped. "She is not." Dr. Pembroke's eyes flicked to the matron, then away. "She is." Eleanor's fingers curled. "Then I will." The matron's voice turned cold. "If you embarrass this institution," Eleanor interrupted, still controlled, "if this institution is embarrassed by the truth, then it deserves to blush." The matron stared at her. Eleanor inclined her head slightly. "Good day, ma'am." She turned and left before her knees could decide to tremble. At 11, Ashford House was exactly what Eleanor expected it to be. Quiet power dressed as calm. A servant led her through halls that seemed designed to make footsteps sound smaller. Then the servant opened a door and announced, "Miss Eleanor Whitmore." The room was not crowded, but it held the sort of people who could make a crowd feel unnecessary. Lady Beatrice stood near the mantel, composed, eyes sharp. Sir Alistair Crane stood close to a writing table, hands clasped as if in prayer for his own success. Dr. Pembroke was there, stiff with discomfort. Two other gentlemen Eleanor did not recognize watched her enter with polite curiosity. Tom stood near the wall, clean and nervous, trying to make himself invisible and failing, and Henry Ashford stood near the center of the room, pale but upright, his posture not theatrical, simply determined. His gaze found Eleanor immediately. It softened in a way that made her chest ache. "Miss Whitmore," Henry said, and his voice carried without effort. "Thank you for coming." Eleanor curtsied this time, not from fear, but because she chose it. "Your Highness." Lady Beatrice's eyes tightened at the exchange. Crane's mouth made a thin, polite line. Henry gestured to a chair near him. "Please." Eleanor sat, hands folded tightly in her lap, and felt every eye measure her as if she were a risk. Henry waited until the door closed again. Then he spoke to the room with steady calm. "I collapsed in a London alley 2 nights ago," he said. "I did not collapse at a ball. I did not collapse at a charity event with photographers and applause. I collapsed alone." Lady Beatrice's voice cut in, gentle and warning. "Henry." He did not look at her. "A nurse found me. She brought me to safety. She treated my fever through the night, and when men came to her door after midnight, she refused them." Crane's voice was smooth. "Your Highness, the nurse did not know who you were." Henry turned his head slightly. "Correct. She did not, and yet she acted with more honor than those who did." A silence fell. Lady Beatrice's gaze sharpened. "You are exaggerating." Henry's expression remained calm. "No, Aunt, I am clarifying." Eleanor's breath caught at the plainness of his address. He was not appealing. He was stating. Henry continued. "Because of her actions, she became the subject of rumor. She was dismissed from her work. She was threatened with disgrace." Crane spoke softly. "No one threatened her." Henry's gaze moved to Crane at last. "Do not lie in this room." Crane's eyes cooled. "Your Highness." Henry lifted a hand, not harsh, simply final. "I will speak without interruption. You have arranged my silence for years. I will not allow it today." Crane's jaw tightened. Henry looked to the two unfamiliar gentlemen. "You are here because you have authority over household conduct and public statements. You are here because you will hear what is true." One of them, an older man with a grave face, nodded once. "We will hear." Henry turned slightly toward Eleanor, and his voice softened, but remained steady enough for the room. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "I told you I would not offer you secrecy. This is me keeping my word." Eleanor's throat tightened. She nodded once, unable to trust her voice. Henry faced the room again. "There has been concern," he said, "about marks upon my body that do not match a sheltered life." Lady Beatrice's expression tightened, the first crack in her calm. Crane's eyes flashed. Henry continued, "Those marks are from years of voluntary visits to clinics and wards under a false name, not for spectacle, for service." One of the gentlemen looked startled. "A false name?" Henry nodded. "Yes, because the moment my name enters a ward, it stops being a ward. It becomes a performance." Lady Beatrice said, "This is inappropriate." Henry's gaze snapped to her. "What is inappropriate is treating poverty like a stain that must not touch royal skin. What is inappropriate is using a woman's reputation as a shield for men's convenience." Eleanor's hands trembled in her lap. Henry turned to Tom. "Tom Quinn." Tom straightened as if pulled by a string. "Yes, sir." Henry's voice stayed calm. "Tell them what you saw." Tom swallowed. His eyes flicked to Eleanor, then back to Henry. "I saw a carriage by Miss Whitmore's street. 2 men. They held someone between them. He wasn't walking right, like he was half asleep. And I saw his hand clutching his coat like he didn't want it taken." Crane's voice was ice wrapped in silk. "Boy, you are imagining—" Henry cut him off. "You will not speak to him that way." Tom's cheeks flushed, but he kept going, voice stronger now. "And I fetched a ledger, sir, like you asked, from the clinic." Henry nodded. "Thank you." Lady Beatrice's mouth tightened. "This is absurd. Dragging a child into—" Henry's gaze hardened. "Do not call him a child when his testimony is inconvenient." The older gentleman said, "Your Highness, is there a record?" Henry nodded. "There is." He looked to a servant by the door. "Bring it." A servant stepped in and placed the ledger on the table. Eleanor recognized it immediately. Her fingers tightened. Henry opened it and turned a page, then held it so the two gentlemen could see. "These entries," Henry said, "show repeated visits under a false name. They show supplies delivered, assistance given, not once, but many times. This was not a whim." Crane's voice was low. "This is precisely why it must not become public." Henry closed the ledger gently. "No, Alistair, this is precisely why it should become public in the only way it should. As truth, not as rumour. As service, not as scandal." Lady Beatrice's voice sharpened. "And what of the nurse?" Henry turned his full attention to Eleanor. Every eye followed. Eleanor felt suddenly too visible. She kept her chin lifted. Henry's voice softened, and it was the most dangerous thing in the room because it sounded like reverence without performance. "What of the nurse?" Henry repeated. "She is the reason I am standing here." Crane spoke quickly. "Your Highness, you cannot—" Henry's gaze snapped back. "You will be silent." Crane's lips pressed together. Henry looked at Eleanor again. His expression held a steadiness that felt like a hand offered across a gap. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "I have restored your position. I have sent notice to correct what was done to you, but correction is not enough." Eleanor's voice came out low. "What do you mean?" Henry's eyes did not waver. "I mean that I will not allow you to be left alone with consequences that were made in my name." Lady Beatrice's voice turned dangerously calm. "Henry, you are speaking as if you intend—" "Yes," Henry said simply. The room went very still. Eleanor's heart hammered so hard she feared someone might hear it. Henry turned to the two gentlemen. "Sir Alistair Crane has used his role to control information and to coerce cooperation through social pressure. He has acted without my consent and against my expressed wishes." Crane's face went pale. "Your Highness, everything I have done has been to protect—" Henry's voice was quiet. "To protect your power." Crane's eyes flashed. "You are unwell. You are emotional." Henry's gaze held his. "And you are dismissed." A sharp intake of breath sounded from one of the men near the wall. Lady Beatrice's hand tightened on the mantel edge. "Henry." Henry turned to her. His voice remained respectful, but it did not bend. "Aunt, if you wish to argue, you may, but you will not decide for me." Lady Beatrice's expression tightened. "You are humiliating this house." Henry replied, "This house is humiliated by its own choices." Crane's mouth opened, then closed. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his cuffs, trying to regain control with fabric. The older gentleman spoke, cautious. "Your Highness, dismissing him will cause ripples." Henry nodded. "Let them ripple. I will not be governed by fear of polite conversation." Crane's voice turned sharp, losing its smoothness for the first time. "And the nurse? Is she to be paraded as proof of your virtue?" Eleanor's stomach clenched. Henry's gaze snapped to Crane with cold clarity. "Do not speak of her as if she is an object." Crane's eyes narrowed. "Then what is she?" Henry did not hesitate. "She is the woman I intend to marry." Silence struck the room like a bell. Eleanor's breath vanished. Lady Beatrice stared as if he had spoken another language. "Henry, no." Crane's face tightened, then smoothed again with effort. "Your Highness, this is—" Henry turned his gaze to Eleanor, and his voice softened in a way that made her feel suddenly alone with him despite all the eyes. "Eleanor," he said, and it was the first time he used her name in that room with no title, no distance, no pretense. "I will not ask you to answer a declaration you did not invite. If you wish to refuse, you may, and I will still clear your name, but I must speak what is true." Eleanor's hands trembled. She forced them still by pressing her fingers together. You hardly know me," she managed. Henry's eyes held hers. "I know what you did when you thought no one important was watching." Eleanor swallowed. "That does not make me fit for your world." Henry's voice stayed calm. "Your world made you strong. Mine made me sheltered. I would rather be shaped by yours." Lady Beatrice's voice broke in, controlled but urgent. "Henry, think." Henry replied without looking at her. "I am thinking." Eleanor stood slowly, because sitting felt like being pushed down. Every eye locked on her. She heard her own pulse in her ears. She felt the weight of 100 unspoken insults, the kind that never needed to be said aloud to cut. She looked at Henry. His face was pale, still touched by sickness, but his posture was steady. His eyes were not pleading, they were offering. "Your Highness," Eleanor said, and her voice shook once before she steadied it. "I will not be anyone's project." Henry nodded. "You will not. I will not be brought into your life to prove you are good," she continued, louder now. Because if she did not claim her truth, someone else would claim it for her. Henry's voice was gentle. "You will be brought into my life because I love you." The word love in that room was not sweet. It was defiant. Eleanor's throat tightened. She blinked hard once. Lady Beatrice whispered, "This is madness." Eleanor turned her head slightly toward Lady Beatrice, not rude, simply honest. "Madam, the madness is that you think a woman's honor can be traded like a ribbon." Lady Beatrice stared at her. Crane's smile returned, brittle. "How charming. A nurse lecturing nobility." Henry's voice cut cleanly. "Leave." Crane stiffened. "Your Highness." Henry's gaze did not move. "Leave this room." The older gentleman nodded toward the door. "Sir Alistair, you have heard His Highness." Crane's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat he looked like a man who had never imagined the floor could vanish under him. Then he bowed, stiff and furious. "As you command." He turned and left. The door closed. The quiet that followed felt different, less trapped, more possible. Henry's gaze returned to Eleanor. "Will you say yes?" he asked quietly. "Not because I am who I am, but because you are who you are." Eleanor's chest ached. She searched his face, looking for the trap, the charm, the performance. She found none. She found a man who had nearly died alone and had decided, at last, to live in the light. Eleanor's voice came out soft. "If I say yes, they will tear me apart." Henry's gaze held hers. "Then I will stand beside you while they try." Eleanor exhaled, shaky. "And if they tear you too," Henry's mouth tightened, "then they will finally see I am human." Eleanor's lips parted. A laugh tried to come and turned into something close to tears. Tom made a small sound like a boy trying not to cry and failing. Eleanor looked at Tom, and Tom wiped his face quickly with his sleeve, furious with himself. Lady Beatrice watched all of it, her expression unreadable now. Eleanor turned back to Henry. "I will not hide," Eleanor said. Henry nodded. "I will not hide you." Eleanor's voice steadied completely. "Then yes." Henry's breath left him as if he had been holding it for years. He took one step closer, not rushing, not claiming. His hand lifted, hovering near hers as if asking permission without words. Eleanor placed her hand in his. His fingers closed gently around it, warm and careful. He did not pull her toward him. He simply held her hand as if it was something precious that could not be commanded. "Thank you," he said, voice low. Eleanor swallowed. "Do not thank me. Keep your promise." Henry's mouth curved slightly. "As you command." A faint, startled sound came from Lady Beatrice, halfway between disbelief and reluctant recognition. The older gentleman cleared his throat. "Your Highness, if this is your decision, it will require formal steps." Henry nodded. "Then we will take them," Lady Beatrice said quietly. "You will be unforgiving." Henry looked at her, and his voice softened, not weak, simply sincere. "Aunt, I am not doing this to punish you. I am doing it to stop being punished." Lady Beatrice's eyes flickered. For a moment, something like exhaustion passed over her face. "You always were stubborn," she said. Henry replied, "Yes." Lady Beatrice's gaze shifted to Eleanor, sharp but less cruel now. "If you truly care for him, you will not make a spectacle." Eleanor held her gaze. "I will not. But I will not be hidden." Lady Beatrice's mouth tightened. "Very well." It was not blessing, but it was not war. Henry squeezed Eleanor's hand once, a quiet gratitude. The weeks that followed moved with a strange speed. Letters were sent, meetings held. Whispers rose and fell like waves. Some doors closed, others opened unexpectedly, as if people had been waiting for someone brave enough to say what everyone pretended not to know. Eleanor returned to the infirmary with her position restored and her head held high. The matron avoided her eyes for 3 days, then finally said stiffly, "Your work has always been excellent." Eleanor replied, "Then judge me by that." Dr. Pembroke approached her one afternoon near the ward doors. He looked uncomfortable, as if apologies made his throat itch. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "I acted under pressure." Eleanor did not soften. "So did I, and yet I did not lie." His mouth tightened. "You have every right to despise me." Eleanor looked at him steadily. "I do not have time to despise. I have patience." He nodded once, chastened. "Yes." Henry came to the infirmary once, quietly, with no parade. He stood at the back of the ward in a plain coat, listening more than speaking. Eleanor found him there and walked straight to him. "You should not be here," she said under her breath. Henry's mouth twitched. "You should not scold me." "I will," Eleanor replied, "when you behave like a boy sneaking sweets." His eyes warmed. "It comforts me." Eleanor's cheeks heated. "You are reckless." Henry leaned slightly closer, careful of ears nearby. "You like me alive, then?" Eleanor's voice turned sharp to hide her tenderness. "I like you obedient." Henry's low laugh was brief. "That will be your greatest struggle." Eleanor glanced at the patients, then back at him. "Have you eaten?" Henry sighed. "Not enough." Eleanor nodded briskly. "Then you will come with me, and you will eat what I put in front of you." Henry's eyes softened. "As you command." Eleanor tried to look severe. She failed. When the day of the wedding arrived, it was not a spectacle. It was formal, proper, and still somehow intimate, because Eleanor refused to let it become theatre. She stood in a simple gown. Her hands were steady. Her heart was not. Henry stood waiting, pale in the morning light, eyes fixed on her as if she were the only thing holding the world in place. When she reached him, he lowered his voice so only she could hear. "You're here," he said. Eleanor's throat tightened. "I said yes." Henry's eyes shone with something restrained and fierce. "I will spend my life earning it." Eleanor's lips trembled. "You will spend your life letting me work." Henry's mouth curved. "That too." When the vows were spoken, Henry's hand trembled slightly as he placed the ring on Eleanor's finger, not because he doubted, but because he felt the weight of choosing truth. Eleanor slid the ring onto his finger with steady hands, as if anchoring him. Afterward, when the guests had thinned and the heir finally belonged to them, Eleanor stood with Henry in a quiet room at Ashford House. A small table held tea that had gone cold. Henry watched her, as if he could not bear to look away. Eleanor exhaled slowly. "So this is it." Henry stepped closer, careful, still asking with his body what he would never demand with words. "This is it," he repeated. Eleanor lifted her chin. "If you ever try to hide me for your comfort, I will walk out." Henry nodded. "If I ever try, it will mean I have become someone you should not stay with." Eleanor's eyes stung. "Don't speak like that." Henry's voice softened. "Then tell me what to speak." Eleanor swallowed. "Speak like a man who knows he is loved and is not afraid to deserve it." Henry's breath left him. His hand lifted, and this time he touched her cheek gently, the way one touches something sacred. Eleanor's eyes closed for a brief moment, not from weakness but from relief so sharp it almost hurt. Henry's voice was low. "You saved my life." Eleanor opened her eyes. "And you saved mine." Henry's brows drew together. "I did not." Eleanor gave him a look. "You did. You took my name into rooms where I was never allowed. You spoke it with respect. You made it harder for them to crush me." Henry's eyes held hers. "Then we saved each other." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Yes." Henry's thumb brushed her cheek once, then fell away as if he feared to take too much. Eleanor caught his hand before he could withdraw. "You may hold my hand," she said softly. "You may hold it all you like." Henry's breath shook. "Eleanor, yes, I thought love was a luxury," he murmured. "Something people like me were allowed only if it did not disturb anything." Eleanor's voice was gentle. "Love is not a luxury. It is a decision." Henry nodded. "Then I decide you. Every day." Eleanor's smile trembled into place, bright and real. "And I decide you. But you will still drink your water." Henry let out a laugh, quiet and undone. "Yes, nurse." Eleanor stepped closer until their foreheads nearly touched. "Listen," she said, voice firm even now. "We will build something useful, not just a marriage, not just a story for them to whisper about. We will build a place where women can train, where the poor can be treated with dignity, where charity is not a performance. Henry's eyes warmed. Tell me what you need. Eleanor swallowed, overwhelmed by the question because it was asked like she was allowed to answer. A school, she said, a proper one, with supplies that do not run out, with wages that do not vanish when a woman is accused of being human. Henry's jaw tightened. You will have it. Eleanor's throat tightened. Do not promise what you cannot keep. Henry's gaze held hers. I can keep it. Not alone. With you. With your stubbornness. Eleanor laughed softly. It will be work. Henry's voice was steady. Good. I have been idle too long. Eleanor drew a slow breath. She looked at him, truly looked, and saw the man who had collapsed in an alley, fevered and frightened, begging her not to let them. Now he stood in front of her, not healed of everything, but healed of hiding. Eleanor's voice softened. From that alley, everything changed. Henry nodded. And thank God you didn't keep walking. Eleanor's eyes stung again. I almost did. Henry's hand tightened around hers. But you didn't. Eleanor leaned in and kissed his cheek. Brief, proper, and still so full of feeling that Henry's breath caught as if he had been struck by joy. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, smiling like a man learning peace. Eleanor's voice turned quiet as if speaking to the whole world through him. If anyone is listening, let them learn this. Dignity is not granted by rank. It is defended by courage. Henry's gaze warmed. And love, he added softly, is the courage to choose the light together. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.